Halo, saya Tasya dari tasa.com.
Halo, gue Zaid dari Kasual.
Saya Nirwan dari Click and Clean.
Saya Dwina dari Mau Belajar Apa. Dengan menggunakan digital signature dari Privy ID membantu kami untuk ekspansi keluar kota dengan lebih mudah dan juga membantu company kami untuk lebih eco-friendly karena lebih paperless.
Sejak menggunakan Oppo ini sangat membantu sekali dengan usaha saya. Tidak usah memerlukan uang kembalian agar tidak terpapar virus. Dengan Oppo ini saya sangat membantu sekali konsumen untuk melakukan transaksi secara non tunai.
Di tengah pandemi ini kami merasa cukup terbantu dengan layanan urun dana yang diinisiasi oleh BeShare. Berkat layanan tersebut, kami tetap dapat melakukan pengembangan outlet di seluruh Indonesia.
Perusahaan kami menghubungkan antara shipper dan transporter. Di masa pandemi ini, kami sangat terbantu dengan adanya fintech agregator Paper ID dalam hal perencanaan cash flow, working capital, dan monitoring.
Pas pandemi kemarin kerasa banget purchasing power turun banget. Nah, untungnya ada bisnis for good dari Sended. Nah, ini ngebantu kita untuk ngurangin operational expenses sehingga bisa fokus sama strategi yang lainnya gitu.
Selama kita bersama,
siapapun
pasti bisa.
aku
Kamu
dan kita semua.
Ini adalah cerita tentang seorang milenial asal Kabupaten Brebes, Jawa Tengah. Namanya Ardanang Yusuf. Usianya 25 tahun dan ia adalah seorang sarjana pendidikan Pancasila dan kewarganegaraan. Sebelum pandemi COVID-19 terjadi di Indonesia, Ardanang berstatus sebagai guru tidak tetap di salah satu SMP swasta di Kota Tegal, Jawa Tengah. Saat pandemi terjadi, sekolah tempat Ardanang mengajar terkena imbasnya. Jumlah murid berkurang sehingga memaksa sekolah memberhentikan beberapa pengajar. Dimulai dari guru berstatus tidak tetap, Ardanang pun jadi salah satunya. Meski awalnya sedih karena kehilangan pekerjaan, ia menolak untuk menyerah pada keadaan dan memutuskan untuk banting setir menjadi pedagang sayur mayur di pasar tradisional Kabupaten Brebes. Hal terpenting dalam bekerja adalah mencari rezeki yang halal, bukan? Ardanang percaya bahwa rezeki yang halal itu adalah sumber keberkahan. Pekerjaan barunya dijalani dengan kreatif. Untuk mengurangi potensi penularan virus melalui uang, Ardanang menggunakan uang elektronik sebagai alat pembayaran. Pembeli jadi lebih aman karena tidak banyak menyentuh uang tunai. Dan ia pun tidak perlu repot menyiapkan uang receh untuk kembalian. Tidak semua pembeli biasa menggunakan uang elektronik. Ardanang seringkali harus menjelaskan keuntungan memakai uang elektronik kepada ibu-ibu yang menjadi pembelinya. Apa yang Ardanang lakukan adalah langkah konkret dalam mendorong digital financial literacy di Indonesia dan tercapainya inklusi keuangan. Tetap semangat Ardanang!
Halo, saya Tasya dari tasa.com.
Halo, gue Z dari Kasual.
Saya Nirwan dari Click and Clean.
Saya Dwina dari Mau Belajar Apa. Dengan menggunakan digital signature dari Privy ID membantu kami untuk ekspansi keluar kota dengan lebih mudah dan juga membantu company kami untuk lebih eco-friendly karena lebih paperless.
Sejak menggunakan Oppo ini sangat membantu sekali dengan usaha saya. Tidak usah memerlukan uang kembalian agar tidak terpapar virus. Dengan Oppo ini saya sangat membantu sekali konsumen untuk melakukan transaksi secara non tunai.
Di tengah pandemi ini, kami merasa cukup terbantu dengan layanan urun dana yang diinisiasi oleh BeShare. Berkat layanan tersebut, kami tetap dapat melakukan pengembangan outlet di seluruh Indonesia.
Perusahaan kami menghubungkan antara shipper dan transporter. Di masa pandemi ini, kami sangat terbantu dengan adanya fintech agregator Paper ID dalam hal perencanaan cash flow, working capital, dan monitoring.
Pas pandemi kemarin kerasa banget purchasing power nurun banget. Nah, untungnya ada bisnis for good dari Sended. Nah, ini ngebantu kita untuk ngurangin operational expenses sehingga bisa fokus sama strategi yang lainnya gitu.
Selama kita bersama,
Siapapun
pasti bisa.
aku
Kamu
dan kita semua.
Ini adalah cerita tentang seorang milenial asal Kabupaten Brebes, Jawa Tengah. Namanya Ardanang Yusuf, usianya 25 tahun dan ia adalah seorang sarjana pendidikan Pancasila dan kewarganegaraan. Sebelum pandemi COVID-19 terjadi di Indonesia, Ardanang berstatus sebagai guru tidak tetap di salah satu SMP swasta di Kota Tegal, Jawa Tengah. Saat pandemi terjadi, sekolah tempat Ardanang mengajar terkena imbasnya. Jumlah murid berkurang sehingga memaksa sekolah memberhentikan beberapa pengajar. Dimulai dari guru berstatus tidak tetap, Ardanang pun jadi salah satunya. Meski awalnya sedih karena kehilangan pekerjaan, ia menolak untuk menyerah pada keadaan dan memutuskan untuk banting setir menjadi pedagang sayur mayur di pasar tradisional Kabupaten Brebes. Hal terpenting dalam bekerja adalah mencari rezeki yang halal, bukan? Ardanang percaya bahwa rezeki yang halal itu adalah sumber keberkahan. Pekerjaan barunya dijalani dengan kreatif. Untuk mengurangi potensi penularan virus melalui uang, Ardanang menggunakan uang elektronik sebagai alat pembayaran. Pembeli jadi lebih aman karena tidak banyak menyentuh uang tunai, dan ia pun tidak perlu repot menyiapkan uang receh untuk kembalian. Tidak semua pembeli biasa menggunakan uang elektronik. Ardanang seringkali harus menjelaskan keuntungan memakai uang elektronik kepada ibu-ibu yang menjadi pembelinya. Apa yang Ardanang lakukan adalah langkah konkret dalam mendorong digital financial literacy di Indonesia dan tercapainya inklusi keuangan. Tetap semangat, Ardanang!
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launching of AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020. I'm Master Abhiyanti, and it's such a great honor for me to be your MC that will guide through all the sessions for today. To begin with, we would like to give a warm welcome to our honorable keynote speakers for today. First of all, welcome to the Governor of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Peri Warjio. Hello, Pak. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. And then to the Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of the Financial Services Authority, concurrently Chairman of Ethics Committee, Ibu Nur Haida. Hello, Ibu. Thank you for joining us today. And then also to the first Vice Minister of Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises and Executive Head of National Economic Recovery and Transformation Task Force, Bapak Budi Sadikin. Thank you, Pak. Hello. And then also the Chairman of AFTEC, Bapak Niki Luhur. Hello, Pak. A very warm welcome to you. Last but not least, I would like to thank everyone who are already joining us via Zoom webinar and also YouTube streaming. So ladies and gentlemen, since 2017, Indonesia FinTech Association, or known as AFTEC, has regularly issued annual member survey report to exhibit development of FinTech industry in Indonesia, including its potentials and its challenges throughout the year. The report utilizes data from preceding year collected through AFTEC annual member survey, which undertake every first quarter. And this year alone, AFTEC annual member survey report is not just showing results from the 2019 annual member survey, but also 2 rounds of survey on the impact of COVID-19 to AFTEC members. Furthermore, it is also highlighting the industry effort to build good corporate governance as part of its commitment to customer protection and responsible innovation in digital finance ecosystem. Some other key topics included in the reports are fintech contribution to the economic recovery thus far, the role and potential of fintech in G2P programs, as well as development of regulatory sandbox. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, today's launching AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020 will be focused on growth versus governance, responsible innovation to support national economic recovery. And now, before we begin this session, I would like to inform you first on the webinar mechanism for those who are joining us through Zoom platform. First of all, participants' audio will be automatically deactivated by the host to anticipate sound leakage from your audio. And second of all, during the session, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. Please state your name and your company's name when asking a question. Third, questions will be answered at the end of each panel discussion. So moderator will choose the questions accordingly. Fourth, choose your word wisely and keep your attitude proper when writing a questions or commenting on other people's questions. And lastly, we expect your attention and good cooperation in order for the event to run seamlessly. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to start the event. Without further ado, the remarks from Ibu Mercy Simorangkir as the Managing Director of AFTEC. Ibu Mercy, the session is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Bapak Peri Warjio, Governor of Bank Indonesia, Ibu Nur Haida, Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, and concurrently Chairman of Ethics Committee, Financial Services Authority, OJK, Bapak Budi Sadikin, First Vice Minister, Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises, and the Executive Head of National Economic Recovery and Transformation Task Force, Bapak Bobi Rizaldi, Member of Parliament Commission 1, Ibu Filianingsih Hendarta, Assistant Governor and Head of Payment System Policy Department Bank Indonesia, Bapak Erwin Haryono, Executive Director of Payment System Policy Department Bank Indonesia, Bapak Triyono Gani, Head of Digital Financial Innovation Group OJK, Bapak Mirsa Aditya Suara, President Director of Indonesia's Banking Development Institute, distinguished panelists and moderators, distinguished representative of ministries and government agencies, AFTEC board members, fellow AFTEC members, friends and colleagues from Asosiasi Fintech Pendanaan Bersama Indonesia or AFPI, and Asosiasi Fintech Syariah Indonesia or AFSI, as well as our media partners. We are delighted to welcome you all to the launch of AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020. We would like to express our profound gratitude to all the keynote speakers, panelists, moderators, media partners, as well as participants joining us today. As mentioned by the MC, since 2017, AFTEC has regularly issued annual member survey report to show the development of Indonesia's fintech industry to all its key stakeholders. For regulator, the report serves as a reference to formulate relevant regulation for fintech. For potential investor and partner, the report highlights key market potential and challenges. And finally, for our members, it provides industry trend and outlook. In regards to this report, I would like to thank all of our members who have filled up the survey and to my team at AFTEC Secretariat who have been coordinating it, analyzing the results, and developing the report. All of you are awesome. You rock. By the time AFTEC completed the annual member survey 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Therefore, AFTEC Secretariat decided to conduct 2 more rounds of surveys between March and June 2020 to better understand the impact of the pandemic towards the industry. We are quite surprised about the findings of the result. In addition to economic impact of the pandemic, we learned that our members have proactively implemented various initiatives to help individuals, help MSMEs, as well as government in overcoming the impact of the pandemic. You will find out more about these initiatives in our chairman's presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has changed the way people live, work, and do economic activity. It changed them to become more digital. The finding from the survey shows that innovation in fintech could serve as means to help accelerate the economic recovery. These could be further optimized and trigger higher competitive advantage in digital financial services sector in Indonesia. However, we believe that innovation is not the only factor that matters. In general, we believe that in order to fully grasp the opportunity to win competition in both regional and global market, good governance in Indonesia fintech industry is a must. That is why the theme that we picked for today's launch is Growth versus Governance, Responsible Innovation to Support National Economic Recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, we trust that today's session will provide you valuable insights and perspectives on the balance between innovation and governance, particularly the big topic of data governance in digital financial services sector. We hope that this event could strengthen further collaboration between regulator, industry, academics, and international partners such as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who has been supported this activity. In a journey, in a quest to equilibrium of innovation and governance, we have faith that through collaboration, no task is too great, no accomplishment is too grand, and no dream is too far-fetched. Here is to fintech, here is to collaboration that genuinely matters, here is to economic recovery, and here is to greater economic inclusion in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mercy, for your kind remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the next session, we'd like to invite our first honorable keynote speaker to deliver the speech with the topic of fine-tuning the rhythm of bank and fintech collaboration to accelerate digitization of payment system and national economic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Governor of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Peri Warjio.
Thank you, Asri, for the nice introduction. Ibu Nur Haida, Pak Budi Sadikin, Niki Luhur, and members of the AFTEC members, fellows, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking Niki and the association for inviting me to speak before this gathering. And let me also congratulate you, the AFTEC, for the launching of the AFTEC annual member survey. As Mercy already explained earlier, just so many the potential, but as well as the challenge, how we digitalize our economy, as well as on how AFTEC play key role on those aspects. As Mercy also mentioned, the member of AFTEC rising as 362 from 24 in 2019. The activity is also increasing, and the startup also increasing. But there is also challenge on that. The rise of digital banking also raising the competition between fintech and digital banking. How the data need to be also be managed properly, and how to balance between developing, promoting startup, as well as on how the governance, stability, risk management need to be play role. And with that in mind, let me address my talk in two aspects. First, on how myself and all of us in Bank Indonesia working aggressively to digitalize our payment system to build the end-to-end integrated ecosystem of digital economy and finance. Second, I also will talk a bit on how AFTEC can play a role on that aspect. Let me start with the first. Last year, remember, Niki and my friends, when we launched Blueprint of Payment System Indonesia 2025. Remember, we met back then. Back then, we never imagined the pandemic is coming. We do not know back then. But we work together on how to fast-growing digital payment system to integrate, to build ecosystem end-to-end process from the very small retail to the e-commerce, merchant, fintech, digital banking, and straight through to on how central bank play a role in building payment system integration, as well as in that infrastructure as well. We promote digital banking because digital banking also playing a role in this ecosystem of end-to-end digital economy and finance. We also promote the interlink between digital banking and fintech. We are also promoting startup in any aspect of digital economic finance with, of course, better, stronger risk management, as well as the stability of the system. And we also, in our vision, how cross-border collaboration need to be played in a role, but with the back in mind of the national interest. Remember, Niki, when we met back then, this is actually our vision. Since then, we already working very aggressively, working together with the industry, with the banking, with the payment system association, with fintech association to build the dream. And here we now, after the pandemic COVID-19, the digitalization of the economic and finance, the digitalization of payment system already and becoming much more accelerated. The the preference of our people, especially the millennial, of using the means of payment in digital, the means of commerce in digital, the means of financial services in digital is very, very fast growing. This is the potential that I think we have to tap. Let me just outline some of the progress that we already worked together in building those dreams through our 5 working group that we are working together. 5 working group in realizing our dream of digitalization of payment system vision blueprint 2025. First, I think we already managed and progressively accelerating the use of QR Indonesian standard, the only standard that we apply in Indonesia. I thank the banking, the fintech, the payment system industry to work together to use QR Indonesian standard as the only standard in Indonesia. And here we already link 4.57 million merchants to be already registered nationally. We never thought we want this fast growing. If we can work together, I think we can double this merchant next year and the following year, and this will be servicing our our population, especially the retail and the SME, to be linking to the financial services industry, whether banking, fintech, and other aspects. Second, we already saw, and the digital banking also progressing. Many banks already also offering services, through digital. In the old days, if we want to open the bank account or we do the transfer, we go to the bank. But now bank also developing so many apps to make use digital as a mean of offering financial services. And we also seeing the use of e-commerce, e-money. This is also fast growing. While non-e-money only growing about 6-7%, the use of electronic money growing about 43-44% at the back of decelerating the economy. So this is also we are seeing the digital payment already progressing. As we also congratulate you, Nikki, the Aftech, the number of startup members rising, your services also expanding not only P2P lending, but also credit scoring and other aspects. This is, I think, the flourishing development of digital payment, digital financial services, whether banking, fintech. Now, the fourth, we also working now on how to interlink between digital banking and fintech. We already issue our consultative paper working with industry to develop application programming interface, API, on how to better interlink between digital banking and the fintech. We need to work on that so that the services both by digital banking and fintech can be accelerated digital economy and finance. I think we have to work together on developing this API. Bank Indonesia now is also in the process to develop the fast payment, retail fast payment infrastructure, BI Fast, to replace SKNBI, System Clearing Nasional Bank Indonesia. BI Fast will be 24/7, will be real time, will be just second to accelerate the settlement and the clearing of those retail payment. So I think this will also a revolution, a reform in other digital payment. Hopefully next year the phase 1 of BI Fast will be live. This is also we want to provide a toll road for this retail payment, so the industry can concentrate of developing the business model. and the cost of transaction will be very, very low. I think this is what we are progressing. We need to also work together on how to develop data hub for the payment system. I think with the use of QR Indonesian standard, the use of API, then I think that the data of payment system, I think can be built as a data hub, and then those with the consumer consent and so on, with the security, cyber and so on, I think this also catering the need of the use of data. Of course, our data on the payment system will be a part of national data integration. I think that will be one part. We also in the process of working with other country bilaterally of how to cross-border QR Indonesian standard and their QR standard. I think with that, I think we are in the process on that. So I think Nikki and my friend after so much development, we are grateful. Last year we already launched blueprint of payments, Indonesian payments in 2025. I'm very grateful. We are all grateful. We work together to build those dreams together. I think we can feel and we can realize the dream even faster than we want to imagine. I think this the first part of my keynote address. The second part is, I think I want also all of us want to also after play much more role. I know, Nikki, all of you already playing a greater role, but much more greater role needed to work together, synergy, to build those dream of ecosystem of digital economy payment, as well as to cater the need of the national economy, the need of our people, and as well as the retail. Three aspects, Nikki and my friend, that I think Aftec can play a role. The first is, of course, how we need to work collaborative, work to interlink between digital banking and fintech. Remember, Nikki, when we met back then last year, I think in every sector, digital banking have their market, Aftec already have the market. Do not need to, because working together better. Because Aftec can reach much more further on the very retail, while digital banking can concentrate more medium and large scale. I think working together, I think catering the need both Aftec, fintech, as well as digital banking. I think working together as semangat gotong royong, as we know in Indonesia, I think will be giving much more win-win solution, better solution, both digital banking and fintech, as well as the need of our economy, the need of the people. Specifically, of course, we need to work together, as I said, to to accelerate the development of application programming interface. Of course, application programming interface can be members only, can be bilateral, can be public, and so on. We need to develop those coding in this API. I think the key on how to work together, both regulator, both digital banking, both fintech, to work together to develop the ecosystem of digital economy and finance, where digital payment system play a key role. Second, of course, on the organization and the work process, I think once again, after Nikki and my friend, we already have Indonesian Payment System Association. I already talked to the association. Representation of the industry need to be in the ASPI. I think that's why Aftec also, I want you to be more active in the ASPI, So we'll be a partner of our initiative in 5 working group. Your work program can also be in line with our program, with ASPI program. So joining, working together where everybody play a role to work together. I think the second aspect, I already talked to ASPI once again, Nikki. I think just work with ASPI so we can work together, because my vision, Bank Indonesia philosophy and developing the policy must be industrial friendly. Filianingsih, assistant governors, and also my executive director, Erwin Rianto, they work very tirelessly, and our team to work with you, to work with digital banking, and so on. This is actually our vision of industrial friendly policy. I think that's all of the policy need to be tested to the industry, and then growing together, creating the businesses. The third aspect is I know Aftek already plays so much role in supporting our national economic recovery. You working already, in the field of the SME, of the very small merchant in traditional market with the youngsters, millennial, and everything. I think that's the one that we are grateful, and then you can increase those participants better, because the international, Pak Budi Sadikin will tell you later how the president himself coordinating economic minister, SOE minister, to promote also the SME development. The SME development will be much greater, much faster, much can be accelerated through digitalization. I think this is already national movement. I think very, very strong movement, including of Gerakan Nasional Bangga Buatan Indonesia. I think that's I think the potential that we can work together between the government, Central Bank Indonesia, OJK. We have Bu Nur Haida, banking, association. We work together to develop the SME development, to digitalize them, to be flourished, to supporting our national economic recovery. Also, we also grateful the fintech also playing a role in the QR Indonesian standard. I think it's very important. The role of Aftek in facilitating the electronification of social program. I think that's important. Also, electronification of transportation. Also, electronification of local government, financial transaction, and so on. I think so much. Aftek can play a role to support our national economy recovery, especially the SME, MSME development. Together, we can be optimized. Will be Indonesia will be one of the best, one of the leading in our movement of digitalized economy and finance, where everybody from the government, central bank, OJK, banking association, including Aftek, we work together. Working together, we will be much more successful. Once again, thank you, Nikki. Congratulations for the launching Aftek annual member survey. All the best and success for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bapak Periwarjo, for sharing this important information to all of us. Coming from a fintech industry myself, I'm very excited to see the synergy between BI and other regulators, and also fintech players, to mitigate this challenging situation and come out stronger than ever as a nation. As much as we want Bapak Peri to stay, but we also truly understand if you need to leave the webinar session due to the tight schedule, ya Pak.
Thank you, Astrid. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Bu Narada, Pak Budi, and thank you, all our members. All the best. See you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Peri. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue and moving on to the next session. I would like to invite our second honorable keynote speaker with the topic of Bridge over Troubled Water, Digitization of Financial Services to Support National Economic Recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of the Financial Services Authority, concurrently Chairman of Ethics Committee, Ibu Nur Haida.
Thank you very much, Astrid. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Even Pak Peri probably already left, but I would still like to say good morning to the Governor of Bank Indonesia, Pak Periwarjo, Also, good morning to the Vice Minister of the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises, Pak Budi Sadikin, and also the Commission 1, member of House of Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia, the representatives of Indonesia Finance Transaction Report and Analysis Center, and also I would like to say good morning to Pak Niki Luhur, the chairman of the Indonesia Association, FinTech Association. Of course, the representatives from ministries and government institutions, chairman of the financial industry and associations, and also participants, and also good morning to everybody, distinguished panelists, moderators, and other honored guests. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to have some speech on this very important event in the launching of AFTEC Annual Member Survey Reports 2019 and 2020. As we know that today, Indonesia and all the world are facing what we call pandemic situation, which affected every part of our life, every aspect of our life. The COVID-19, we know, has reshaped our activities in many ways. We have now less mobile, we work from home, virtual meetings, and long distance learning, and also online shopping become our day-to-day life these days. So this is the changing that we have in our life because of the pandemic COVID-19. And what does it impact? How does it impact the economy? The COVID-19 pandemic at firstly compressed national economic growth. We know that in the first quarter of 2020, we still have economic growth by 2.97%, but on the second quarter of 2020, our economy is constructed by 5.32% year on year. So all economic sectors experience a decrease in the second quarter of 2020. So this is we cannot say that this is because of anything, but mostly because of the pandemic. Maybe the sectors that are not very much impacted by the COVID-19 is communication and information, because the information and communications, these sectors display some development, if we may say, in line with the better acceptance of digital media in reaction to work from home and also school from home that we just, conducted for the last few months. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's situation, the role of digital finance innovation will be very crucial in the financial services industry in helping the government to face the existing challenges. With the technology, the benefit of financial products and services can be enjoyed without any or with a little bounds to time or places. So with the technology, places or times that's not a matter of things that we have to consider. During the COVID-19 lockdowns, the digital financial services allow government to deliver fast and protected financial support to the excluded group. That's, before we cannot reach this kind of group, but with the financial or digital financial services, those kind of groups can be approached, or we can reach them, due to the Indonesian situation, And also with this technology, Indonesia financial services must keep up to the change and minimize the pandemic's effect by continuing to innovate and collaborate in creating added value for society. Well, if you look back, ladies and gentlemen, for the last few years, the change toward digital financial services was actually already helped societies improve financial inclusion before the pandemic was happening. So what I mean is that before we have a pandemic of COVID-19, actually we have tried to develop our digital financial industry due to the objectives of financial inclusion and also financial literacy. So actually with this additional impact of COVID-19, then with the lockdown and social distancing, this is quickening the use of digital financial services. So if we look at how has the fintech developed in Indonesia, if we look at the development of fintech in Indonesia, we can say that the development has been started, rapidly since 2016. And currently, we have 157 fintech peer-to-peer lending, which is already registered, also licensed by OJK. And on top of that, we have 86 digital finance innovations also are already recorded with OJK, and another 3 equity crowdfunding that has been licensed by OJK. These growths are showing that we have an advanced market actually in Indonesia, fintech, that could support economic recovery. So in this kind of situation, we have, as I mentioned, we have 86 recorded financial innovations, and we have also 3 equities crowdfunding. The digital finance innovations are divided actually into 18. So far, the 86 recorded digital financial institutions, we have what we call clusters. They are now, we have 18 clusters. So actually, following on what Governor Peri just mentioned, on top of payment system that has been developed very much in digitalization, actually the new financial innovations, or we call it probably startups, now we have about 18 clusters. The 18 cluster can be, have so many. We have aggregators, we have claim service handling, there are also credit scoring, and also property investment management, financial planners, financial agents, also funding agents, online distress solution, online gold depository, project financing, social network, and robot advisor. We also have blockchains, come to our sandbox, and also tax and accounting, electronic know your customer, or we call it EQIC, customer due diligence verifications, insurtech, regtech, and insurance broker marketplace. This is will be, follow, and next is already in our, we recorded, and now they are in the middle of experiencing or supervise or monitor in our sandbox. So now, actually, what a question is for us, or for me, or for us in OJK, actually, if we have this kind of clusters, we have 18 clusters, will we be have any specific regulations for each of them? Of course, we have to make sure that every cluster or every business models have to have some regulations. But things is that right now, out of this cluster, out of the 86 financial innovations, they are not all equal in number. Some of them have quite a lot business entities, but some of them only 1 or 2 business entities. So the question is, should we have a specific regulations for the one that have only like 1 or 2 entities? I hear some sound. Okay, so the regulation, through regulation sandbox, considering the risks of generated by certain use cases or any other specific issue that needs special attention, OJK may also formulate specific regulations on specific subject matters. As I mentioned, the purpose of this regulation is very specific. It should be more detailed and in-depth. So currently, we see that the most companies that already in our record system is at least we have 4, which is aggregators, project financing, and also financial planners, and alternative credit scoring. So probably in a very very near future, we will start to regulate those 4 different clusters. And to monitor this digital financial innovations development, OJK applies 3 regulatory and supervisory strategies in order to support digital finance innovations and in Indonesia. The strategy actually is, first, we have to enabling but balance framework. OJK will ensure the safety and also soundness of fintech development, while also prompting innovation and competitions. And we also have to have the agile regulations. This is really what we mean. What we mean by agile regulation is that we will regulate based on a principle-based approach, meaning that we don't regulate very much on, for instance, like the capital or things like that, but it is more on the principle-based approach, meaning that we have more on the market conduct. And then the next one is the third strategy or third principle is market conduct supervision. OJK is accountable actually for regulations and supervision of fintechs. Meanwhile, the fintech industry is responsible for monitoring their operations through the use of sound corporate governance practices, risk management, and compliance, and most importantly, an industry code of conduct, to complement OJK's market conduct regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, another important pillar in market conduct supervision is the role of fintech associations. So we know that we have fintech association, we have AFTEC right now. Fintech association has to be approved by OJK. Right now we have 2 approved fintech associations. First is AFTEC, and we already approved since a few, some times ago. And the new approval we just issued is for fintech that deal with Sharia, which is AFSI. So we hope that both fintech, we can collaborate together to make a better fintech development in our country or in Indonesia or in our market. Another things that I would like to mention that we really need fintech association to act as an extension of OJK overseeing its members, overseeing its member. Digital financial innovators are also expected to be a member or to join the association, just to make sure that the fintech innovators increase level of compliance with existing laws and regulations and enabling synergies between innovators. And what do really we expect from the appointed association? We expect the fintech association, which already appointed by OJK, to commit to some aspects of governance and also development. So we expect the associations not just to care with the governance, but we also like to make sure that FinTech Association is also committed to development of FinTech industry in Indonesia. So we would like the Association of FinTechs to comply with the regulations, of course, and comply with standards that is set by Indonesian Financial Services Authority or OJK. And we also expect the association to develop standards for the industry and also to support OJK's program and policies, and also to implement and uphold consumer education and also protections, as well as actively engaging in domestic or even in international cooperations. OJK, of course, will monitoring the effectiveness of the associations and surveilling the market as the indicators of successful supervision practices. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at from the customer point of view, the implementation of combination of alternative credit scoring, EQIC, and also aggregators, this could benefit the customer in discovering the essential financial, financial support, so that they can, acquire their credit worthiness and evaluate without the need to go to the physical office of financial services. Governor Perry just also mentioned this morning that nowadays, with the digitalization of financial institutions, customer doesn't have to go, to come to the office of banks, for instance, or the office of capital market intermediaries, but they can have their credit scoring, they can have their credit worthiness through the system that we built, with digitalization. So this is, I think, become the new financial services industry era in the new normal. So this is things that we have to work together, as just mentioned also by Governor Perry this morning, that all have to collaborate all together so that we can have the most benefits from the development of digital financial system in Indonesia. With the digital financial system services, we also have to ensure the improvement of financial literacy. This is very important because we know that literacy degree in Indonesia is still low, and we have some very very challenging target to increase the financial literacy in Indonesia. Why? Because financial literacy implies the ability to support healthy financial markets where consumers can better manage their financial lives and make informed and appropriate choices regarding the responsible use of financial services. So literacy is very important. Our people who doesn't really have literacy on finances, they don't have much choice. So they need to have more knowledge about financial system. And because of the condition in Indonesia, we know that we have so many remote areas, very far remote areas. With the conventional system technology, we cannot reach people outside or in the remote area. So this is very important. This is another benefit for us to develop digital technology, because we can, using the fintech companies, we can reach our people in the remote area, in very, outer island of Indonesia. And this is another important that we also, when we have literacy, then we will increase financial inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you one of the real steps what OJK done to accelerate the growth of financial literacy and financial inclusion levels, particularly in digital finance innovations. OJK has launched what we call a digital financial literacy or DFL curriculum. The deliverables of the first module have been issued, which are in form of books, e-books or electronic books. We also have animated video and also interactive games. We are very excited to issue other curricula which we believe will bring great insight in and entertaining ways that makes it easy to digest the digital financial information for everyone. It is one of OJK's responses to digital finance innovation that has been developed in Indonesia. And also, of course, along with efforts conducted by OJK, the FinTech Association is also expected to step up and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic with its special initiatives. Aftex, I believe, has announced several strategic partnerships with FinTech to deliver programs such as lower interest and zero platform fee for the transaction conducted by small and medium-sized enterprises or SMEs. I think Aftex is already have the program for free financial consultation programs for SME, which is very much appreciated. Also API utilization enhancement for the digital finance services delivered to the society. And we believe Aftex have many more initiatives, to help the recovery of our economy. The initiative aims to actually to bundle the offerings of all digital finance innovations, services, and makes them more easily accessible to the SMEs and also to the group that is affected by COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, this situation is not for us, not the time for us to attempt to apply utterly new digital and technology solution. It is actually the stage to use the digital infrastructure that we already have and to create for better effects. The best means to do this maybe well be for governments to gather the digitalized financial sector in fintechs experts and to discover what can be performed for this bill of country. So I think in the national level, we also have some very serious development programs for fintech development. So I think, sorry, we should work together, just Bank Indonesia, OJK, and also fintech associations, as well as fintech industry in Indonesia. So together, we believe that all the conditions that we have right now due to the pandemic COVID-19 can be, overcome together. So with this seminar, with the launch of Aftex annual member survey and with all the, speakers that will have the sessions later on, I believe that we will have a much more vibrant discussion. And then we hope that the outcomes of this session will be the improvement of fintech industry in Indonesia and their contributions to recover economic situation in Indonesia. With this, I would like to end my remarks and thank you very much. Again, I wish you have a more vibrant discussion in this event, and we hope that we can have some very significant output of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Nurhaida, for sharing this very useful insights, and also congrats on the launch of digital financial literacy tools. It will be very, very helpful for us, many Indonesians, especially if we want to know about the fintech and finance sector per se. For the next session, moving on, we would like to invite our third honorable keynote speaker to deliver the topic of Get on Your Feet, the role of fintech in national economic recovery programs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome First Vice Minister of Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises and Executive Head of National Economic Recovery and Transformation Task Force, Bapak Budi Sadikin.
So good morning, everyone. I feel touched with these associations of fintech because when I was working in banking several years ago, I'm quite heavily involved in the establishment of this association. So I wish you all well. Uh, my friends, I would like to share three things on this occasion. First, I would like to say thank you to all of you, and I would like to share the story about this crisis because I just being appointed about 40 days ago as the head of the Economic Recovery and Transformation Task Force for COVID. Second, I will share with you what am I think about the role of fintech now. What I believe that the fintech industry can help Indonesian people, Indonesian economy now. And then the last thing I would like to share with all of you, my expectation, my hope, my prayer, what fintech players can do for Indonesia in the future. So let me start with the crisis. How do I see the crisis now? I live as a banker for more than 25 years. So I've seen three crises until now. The big one is on the 1998 Asian financial crisis. Hit Indonesia very badly. And then the second one is the global financial crisis in 2008. Hit the world very, very badly, but fortunately for Indonesia, not as bad as 1998. And another one is the financial crisis that hit the world globally in 2013. So having been in the center of these three crises, because I live and work in financial industry, I noticed the difference between the previous three crises with the current 2020 economic crisis. The first three crises was started by a financial crisis. So it started with the financial industry first. Back in 1998, because we have too much foreign borrowing, foreign loan, Indonesia had too much foreign loan. The 2008 crisis, it happens because of a global US dollar liquidity that happened because of a mortgage crisis back in the US. And in 2013 crisis, again, it's another US dollar global liquidity issues because there is an effect called taper tantrum, where the Fed or the US central banks, withdrawing all the US dollar liquidity from the market. So again, what I've seen in the previous three crises, three economic crises globally, it was started or initiated by a financial crisis. So every knowledge that we have, every policy that we made at that time is based on these financial crises, which is totally different with the 2020 global economic crisis. Because this time, the global economic crisis because of the health crisis, because of the pandemic crisis happens of COVID-19. So what knowledge that we know, the policy that we make is not 100% should replicate in the last three crises. Because the beginning, because the source of this economic crisis is totally different in the last three crises that we used to be, that we understand how to make a policy response. It is a totally different crisis. And the question many people around me asking, why this health or pandemic crisis can create a massive global economic crisis. My observation is because this health crisis enforced us to do lockdown, and lockdown reduced significantly the physical activities, the physical context. Unfortunately, in Indonesia, physical contact is one of the most important pillars in Indonesian economy. So if we don't have physical contact, then the economic activity reduce drastically. As good as we want to replace this physical contact to virtual contact or digital context, it is still not be able to stimulate or to move the economy as good as physical context. As long as we are using webinar everywhere, it's still less effective than using physical seminar. As long as as much as we want to use e-commerce everywhere, it's still as not as efficient to move the economy with a normal wet market that's spread around 13,000 islands of Indonesia, where people do physical trade. As long as we can have a virtual meeting everywhere in this country, or virtual education in this country, it is still not as efficient as when we do a physical education or meeting when teachers and students meet together physically. So that is the reality. That is the reason why this pandemic crisis, create a very heavy economic crisis. I remember William is here. William mentioned to me that, digital or virtual e-commerce in Indonesia is only maybe 5% of the total retail economy of Indonesia, whereas in US already reached 15%, and maybe in China reached above 30%. So it shows again that, this crisis happened because of the health crisis, the pandemic crisis. It create an environment that people feel uncomfortable to do physical contacts. Because of this, then we have an economic problem. So we have to understand here what I can do as the chairman of the economic task force. How much money I have, how much money I spend, it will not be enough if the health crisis is not fixed. It is a health problem. The health should take priority. With all my humbleness, I to agree that the leadership role should be taken by a health professionals, not an economic professionals. Because what? Because again, this is a health crisis. Health issue should be the priority. If people still feel very afraid to get out of their houses, do physical contacts, the economy will not move. My credit card usage now reduced significantly, maybe only 10% or 20% of my common credit card usage. Now, by the way, it's shared by my wife and my kids. So they are the one that reduce their usage drastically because they don't feel comfortable to go out. They feel scared to go out. So we need, unless we are able to convince the Indonesian people to change the scary feeling, the uncomfortable feelings, and make them feel convenience, okay to go out, do physical contacts, do physical activities, then the economy will start back to their feet again. So that is the first message that I would like to share with you. This crisis is totally different with the three economic crises, global economic crisis that we have. It started with health crisis. So our energy, our focus, our money, our policy responses should be, driven how to fix the health issue first. So that is the first one. The second one, what fintech can play the role in this pandemic crisis? Again, when I see these economic issues, and we understand that we need to focus on how to fix the health issue first, how to put our priorities into solving the health problems, the pandemic problems. We understand that, yes, vaccine is a very good answer. Vaccine will recover the trust of many people to feel safe, so they can go out, do physical contacts, and then normal economic activity will happen. Unfortunately, vaccine on the average need 7 years to be produced. The fastest was 4 years. Yes, technology is evolving, but at least while we have a pretty strong confidence that the vaccine will be available, not as confident as the politicians might be. Some politicians are more confident, especially when it's close to the election. What I can say is we should have another alternative strategy when it doesn't happen. So we are ready if it is, and it happens like AstraZeneca, Oxford, one of the front runner in terms of vaccine developer, suddenly they have to withheld their clinical trial because there is something happened during the clinical trial. So at least we have another strategy rather than vaccine alone to make sure that we can convince people to feel safe, go out, do physical activities, and move the economic activities again. So then we realized that there are two aspects that the fintech people can play a role. This pandemic is similar with the previous pandemic happened globally. And some of the pandemic, there is a vaccine found. Some of the pandemic, there is no vaccine found. No. I give you an example. If you got hit by tuberculosis or dengue 100 years ago, there is almost 100% chance you will die. So people feel very, very scared. But if you got hit by dengue or tuberculosis now, there will be a very big chance that you will survive as long as you are treated properly. And the vaccine is not there yet for dengue. So what I can say with you is, now the therapeutics is also as important as the vaccine. The therapeutic strategy, the treatment strategy is also as important as the vaccine strategy. If you got hit by COVID-19 and you understand that there is a 97 probability for you to live, then you will feel okay. It's like another flu or tuberculosis or dengue. When you got hit, unfortunately, but I can still live. So you will not reduce the scary feelings of yours will not reduce for you to go out, do physical activities, and again, do normal economic activities. So, this treatment, this therapeutics, there is a lot of development. There's a lot of development. And this development can be supported, can be financed from your shareholders. So the fintech can talk to your shareholder and say, hey, my business will not recover as much as what we planned before unless the health issue is solved. Why don't we start diverting some of our investment into fixing the health issues? And then it will automatically help us in recovering the economic issues. The second thing that people in fintech can do is, to avoid this pandemic, there are three things that is being mentioned by all the pandemic experts globally. In Indonesia, you call it 3M, memakai masker, menjaga jarak, dan mencuci tangan. Maybe in English, I will translate it 3 W's. Wash your hand, wear your mask, and widen the distance. So this one can be, the government would like to impose this program. But I strongly believe program is not as strong as movement. Rather than the government pushing, it will be much more successful if the people believe that they should do it. And fintech have a very unique community because the millennials are all, love fintech. So you can use your social capital, you can use your influence capability to establish a movement of these 3 W's. in the all of Indonesian people, especially the millennials. Wash your hand, wear your mask, widen your distance. Because if we do this, then the opportunity to spread the pandemic will be reduced drastically. People will feel safe to go out, and then physical active contact will happen, and then economic activity will recover. And to do this, there are many things that you can do. I give you an example. Now it's very difficult for the transportation industry, the restaurant and hotel got hit badly. The reality is, you know, to have a new normal business, people should feel comfortable to come to restaurant. People should feel comfortable to stay in a hotel. People should feel comfortable to fly again. And fintech can help that. You know, instead of, like example, we are doing physical tests before at the airport and create a very long queue. Why don't we do a pre-test like what we do if you want to go for Hajj? We receive a yellow book. This is for meningitis vaccinations. Then you can electronize this, yellow book. Instead of physically, you put it digitally. We can put it in a Google Wallet or Apple Wallet. Every time you go to do a rapid test, or you go swab test, or you go whatever, any future COVID-19 health check, it is automated, put into your wallet, and you can use this health passport everywhere. You want to fly, you just scan the QR code with this health passport. You want to go to malls, you do the same thing. You want to go to the office, you do the same thing. Even if you want to go to a concert, instead of scanning the ticket, they will scan your health passport and will let you in because you have proven that you are clean. Or even if you are a dad that have a beautiful daughter, if the boyfriend is coming, you can, ask him also to scan the QR code in your home before, something happens between your daughter and her boyfriend. So this is the technology that you can help to make sure that the infrastructure to make people feel secure to go out is there. To go out is there. So like Tokopedia, I'm a customer, a client of Tokopedia and Shopee. I love to buy online. But when you buy online, you see the star, right? Whether it's good merchant or not a good merchant. Or even if you go TripAdvisor, you see good restaurant and bad restaurant, 5-star, 4-star, 3 stars. Actually, you can make the same thing. Every restaurant in Jakarta, we can give them star, but not because of the services and the quality of food, but because of the health compliance protocols, the 3 Ws or the 3 Ms, whether they are following these protocols or not. If they are following this protocol, and then the guest can give a 5-star, this restaurant is really, really good. There is no physical menu. We can order online and we can pay online. So almost zero interface. And we can do it. So we give them 5-star. So by doing that, we build an ecosystem supported by the fintech community where you help the government in reshaping the new behavior of our people. The new normal is being reshaped by the fintech community because you understand how technology works and you can do it more efficiently than others. So that is what I see fintech can play a role in many activities of normal people before they are doing it physically, now they are doing it virtually. Before they need physical context, now without a physical context, they can do it. Because it is needed. We cannot only have a one strategy, which is vaccine. We need vaccine strategy, we need therapeutic strategy, we need also behavioral strategy. And the 3 strategies need to be done simultaneously. And you can play a role. Not the last one, I would like to share what is my expectations that fintech can do in the future. I just realized, I just learned about 2 months ago that this COVID-19 pandemic was created by a virus called SARS-CoV-2. So I would like to stress number 2. The SARS-CoV-1 virus hit the world in 2003. in China. Fortunately for us, it is not as easily spread out as SARS-CoV-2. But China has experienced this pandemic before. So they are much well prepared compared to us in health infrastructure, including digital infrastructure. They understand that when this pandemic hit, we need to establish a very strong digital or virtual infrastructure so the economy can still move. That's why they are well prepared now. And nobody take a look or notice or mention about this or prepare a solid strategy about this. Only Bill Gates reminded us back in his famous YouTube. He talked in TED conference, one of the TED conference. I received a YouTube about 4 months ago, 5 months ago, that Bill Gates is saying, hey, human beings believe their enemies, the biggest enemies are human beings. So they create a very strong weapon to kill another human being. They are so stupid, this human being, because they don't understand that the biggest enemy that will kill them is not human being, but a small animal called virus. So rather than spend billions of US dollars to build weapon to kill another human being, why don't we spend this billion of US dollars to improve our health infrastructure? So when this soldier of virus is coming in, we are well prepared. Nobody listens to Bill Gates until now. It happens. So what I can suggest to you? You are the young Indonesian millennials. You have access to money. You understand technology better than anyone. Indonesia is blessed by a very rich biodiversity and large genetics varieties. We need big data. We need Internet of Things. We need artificial intelligence to translate this rich biodiversity, to translate the large genetics variety, to help the world, to help Indonesia. And big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence is just right. Because this health issue before solved manually, but now is very IT based. I can share with you the most advanced vaccine, which is Moderna in the US and BioNTech Pfizer in Germany, are based on the new technology called nucleic acid technology. And it is depends on big data and artificial intelligence a lot. The way many countries are treating their patients, millions of patients is just coming in. It's impossible to be handled by hospitals. They need to be isolasi mandiri. They need to be individually isolated. And many countries use an Internet of Things health equipments or medicine equipments, and also a telemedicine services of the doctors. Because otherwise, the hospital bed will be overwhelmed. We will not be able to do it. But with the new technology, we can still deliver the health services, the healthcare services to the needy using this technology. So those are where you can play a role. I understand that California, the West Coast, is a very interesting belt, California belt, because that is where the fintech are located. But I would like to ask you, why don't you expand not only to the West Coast, to the East Coast? Why don't you also expand instead of California belt to Boston, Massachusetts belt? Why do you also expand from fintech to biotech? Because it is needed for the new world, for the new future of us. I strongly believe you are the one that have access to capital. You have the one that access to technology. You are the one that have, you will live longer than me. The world of tomorrow will be totally different with the world of today. And we need people like you, to help us shape the world of tomorrow, that it is become healthier for us to live, for human beings. And I would like to say, I would like to close my short speech to all of you is, when the wind of change is coming, when the enormous wind of change is coming like this, Many people will build walls, but only a few smart, successful people will build a windmills. So I do hope, I'm getting old, but I would like to make sure that you are the one, that most of you are younger than I do, will help creating a new, better world for tomorrow, based on technology, based not only in financial technology, but also in biotechnology. All the best, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now the moment that we are all waiting for, delivering the highlights of AFTEC Annual Member Surveys Report 2019-2020. Please welcome the Chairman of AFTEC, Bapak Niki Luhur, with the topic of Growth versus Governance, Responsible Innovation to Support National Economic Recovery.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And first, I'd like to give a special thanks to Pak Peri Warjio for the amazing speech and a lot of amazing insights about the opportunities we have and progressive vision from Bank Indonesia on how we can continue to progress the adoption of digital payments, and not only in making it go further downstream and lowering the costs and improving the adoption, but as well as how do we think about the future of digital banking? How can we further foster collaboration? How can we create more partnerships, not only between the fintech ecosystems, but between financial institutions and the fintech ecosystems? And we are very honored to be able to participate as AFTEC to be able to give our part in helping contribute the standards that we believe can help accelerate the digital ecosystem, whether it's from open APIs to data governance standards, whether around payment IDs to enrich the accessibility of payment information to be leveraged for things like credit scoring or digital financial services to improve access to capital and ultimately give consumers more access, and to encourage more usage and higher quality financial services. This is something we're very excited about, and we'll definitely respond to Pak Peri's call to action of getting more involved with ASPI, and look forward to doing the hard work and being able to contribute in a really concrete way. So we're very thankful for Pak Peri and Bank Indonesia's very progressive vision, especially in the future as we think about not only the Indonesian digital economy, but how we can open up towards a larger international digital economy, while at the same time ensuring that proper data governance around data privacy and cybersecurity standards are really at international standards, so that we can really open up our economy to the entire world. Also would like to give a special thanks to Ibu Nur Haida again for the amazing support that we continue to have, and the trust that OJK has given to us as a self-regulatory organization, and the opportunity to create responsible codes of conduct. So very, very thankful. We will definitely respond to the call to action on enabling a balanced framework and agile regulations, and our role as to help develop not only broad code of conducts for all fintechs, but vertical specific code of conducts to help make sure that there is sustainable development and that consumers continue to be protected and have more and more trust in our digital financial services. Last but not least, I'd like to give another special thank to Pak Budi Sadikin for the really inspirational speech on how we can rise to the occasion in this health crisis, and how we can, as the younger generation, take on this responsibility and this challenge, not only to think about financial services, but fundamentally, how do we help restore confidence in the economy, and how do we restore confidence and open this up and leverage our expertise in technology to go beyond just financial services, but to think about how do we improve social capital to improve the confidence to participate, and whether it's through initiatives around a low-touch economy and help build bridges that we can engage not only in the physical way in a safe manner, but as well as in the online environments. So thank you very much, Bapak-Bapak dan Ibu-Ibu, and also like to give a special thanks to Bapak Bobby Rizaldi, our Member of Parliament, for being able to make time for us and join our event. Pak, thank you very much. To Pak Triyono as well. Bapak Triyono Gani, the head of Digital Financial Innovation Group from OJK. We have had an amazing working relationship and look forward to continue to be able to develop more work together. To Bapak Mirza, President Director of Indonesia's Banking Development Institute, thank you very much, Pak, for being here, and to all the distinguished panelists and moderators who have kindly agreed to share your valuable time with us, and more importantly, the amazing insights to come. So I'd like to immediately kick off and not waste too much time and go into the annual member survey. We have been conducting the survey for a number of years now, and these just hopefully can give everyone a quick snapshot on what is going on in the Indonesian fintech ecosystem. So the growth and development of the fintech industry in Indonesia continues to be strong, and the following slides will show a few quick statistics. I think first and foremost is the number of members, and really thankful to our memberships, our members for being very active. Currently today, we estimate about more than 80% of the industry is involved with AFTEC, and we're very proud to have the diversity of different fintech verticals. Here's just a quick snapshot. The slide's perhaps a little bit hard to see right now, but we'll be able to share this report with you. It's just to show that it goes beyond digital payments. I think payments has been around for a long time, and we'll get into more details there, but there's a variety of verticals from lending to financial aggregators to financial planners. There's a number of different areas of innovations beyond, of course, payments and lending. Next. Here are some quick statistics. There's been tremendous growth in this year, despite the slower economy and despite the economic challenges. There's been a remarkable shift online, and it's definitely been seen with, especially in the e-money segment, as even Pak Perry was talking about earlier. There's been a rapid growth in this segment, and largely fueled by a lot of online transactions, e-commerce transactions, food deliveries, and I think this will hopefully continue to grow in a healthy way. Next. So the maturity level is, payments has been around in Indonesia for quite some time, and I think a lot of the payments companies have already gone not only 10 plus years, but maybe already 15 to 20 years in the industry today. What's interesting is that digital lending has also, in a shorter period of time, only since really around 2016, when the regulations first came out around peer-to-peer lending, have grown very rapidly. And this is very encouraging as we see really the collaboration and the support from the government and from the regulators is translating into industry growth by giving a clear framework for companies to operate and understanding the playing field of what needs to be done. Next. A few areas, the distribution of the primary users is definitely between 18 and 50 years old, and there's quite a large adoption and quite a balanced adoption. The main market penetration of fintech services still is predominantly in the large cities, primarily in the large urban cities in Indonesia. And we think there can be a lot more work done as a community to help spread this towards tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, and ultimately rural areas. And I think a lot of policy initiatives around areas such as agent banking and independent agent networks really could help drive a lot more adoption towards a wider audience. The income base is quite diverse as well. So we're seeing that this is not just being adopted, from the affluent employee, white collar or professionals. This is actually being adopted across a variety of income segments. So I think the key challenge from this that's highlighted in this slide is really enabling more geographic expansion and being able to take the current suite of products and services that are out there and introduce it to a wider audience across the archipelago. The years of operations has evolved quite a bit. In fact, I think it was only payments that was more than 10 years old in more than 10 years of operations in across all the fintech verticals when we started in 2016. So a lot of this is getting more and more mature. And again, we believe there's a direct correlation to the regulators being able to put together a conducive framework that allows for the industry's growth. So today we're also seeing that a big pivot because of COVID-19 has dramatically changed the market and how businesses are operating today. So accordingly, as fintech, we are just a part of the ecosystem of the economy, and I think we can see that a large amount of companies have already made significant pivots post-pandemic, even though definitely a positive trend towards adoption of digital financial services. How it's delivered, what exactly is needed has definitely changed, and we're happy to see the industry moving in a fairly agile way to meet the new demands. In terms of investment, we're seeing that there was a lot of fundraising activity, and there has been a lot of fundraising activity over the past couple of years. But I would say at this point in time, while we see obviously the very large unicorn investments and the big checks that have been all across the news, we're also seeing that the overall industry is getting to a more mature stage as well. For a long time, I would say it was predominantly seed investments and angel investments, and now we're seeing it progress a little bit further towards the Series A. So almost the median of the industry is moving towards Series A size investments. And of course, beyond that, there are a few companies that are already in a growth equity stage, and it's seeming to be a very good opportunity for many venture capital firms to engage, because I think at this point in time, the scale and the size of investments is now becoming more and more attractive. So this is something that we encourage a lot of VCs and growth equity firms to really take a serious look at what's going on in the industry. It's really exciting with the number of companies that are progressing in terms of maturity and investability. So it's really important, as Pak Budi mentioned, that fintechs will also participate in how we can bring a positive social impact, not only in terms of financial inclusion, but especially now, given the challenges with with the COVID-19 pandemic. And here are just a few of the different types of initiatives. Although overall the impact is clearly negative because of the economy and the underlying economic activity and the number of users and the sales volumes for a lot of the businesses have definitely reduced, and there's operational challenges and lower productivity. There's more difficulty in fundraising, and there's definitely a need to delay a lot of business expansion and focus a lot more on survival. So the fintech industry is not without its own challenges. However, I think with every crisis, there are not only challenges, but there are opportunities. So in the next couple of slides, these are a simple chart of the number of e-money instruments out in the market. And we've seen a rapid rise, not only in the adoption, but more importantly, the usage of e-money instruments, as well as peer-to-peer lending. And today, I think we finally have a number that's larger than the number of mobile phone subscribers in Indonesia. And I think that was always used as a fun fact, that there are more mobile phone subscribers than there are people in Indonesia in terms of the population. But now there's even more e-money accounts out there than the population of Indonesia. So fintech is really committed to the fintech industry. There are quite a few players that have volunteered resources, volunteered our expertise in technology, in engineering, and software engineering specifically, to try and create some platforms for the distribution of social assistance programs. So we're quite happy that the community is responding and rising to the occasion, not only to leverage their own platforms, but to contribute our resources to be able to conduct some joint development with the government. And we're very thankful that the Indonesian government has been very open-minded to really new innovations, and for us to give us a chance to make an impact and to do our part as well. I think some of the areas and the initiatives that where the industry, the fintech industry, has been able to help concretely with micro and small medium enterprises and the public is trying to reduce some of the operational costs, whether it's being able to waive transaction fees and be able to enable the use of services and to try and relax the costs of adoption of a variety of fintech platforms. There's also strengthening financial management through offering free consultation of everything from how to plan your cash flows in a crisis to for varying sizes of businesses. And last but not least, facilitating finance and provisioning really low interest rates and trying to be a platform and giving, again, zero platform fees for areas such as not only loans, but project financing, and trying to help continue to keep the wheels of the economy moving forward. So all of this is definitely needs to be balanced. Realizing the optimum potential of fintech really requires, I think, a lot of coordination with the regulators, with the authorities, to be able to create a balanced framework, as you heard from Ibu Nur Haida. And we're lucky to have such a constant dialogue with our regulators, and we hope that we can continue to work on a few areas. The top 3 areas of improvement that are needed is continued clarity and regulation to assist in the speed of licensing and the elimination of red tape, and to improve really some of the regulations and around eKYC, to be able to facilitate digital onboarding and be able to extend that digital reach and remove some of the barriers and friction from some of the face-to-face requirements that fundamentally are still needed as part of the process of onboarding new customers. So these are a few areas that I think on the FinTech Association side, we continue to build more working groups to go through the details of what are the regulations that need further clarity, and how do we collaborate more intensively and more frequently with Bank Indonesia, with OJK, to be able to fine-tune what this really means, as well as some certain new areas that are coming out from Kominfo, the Ministry of ICT, around areas such as personal data protection and cybersecurity frameworks. Really what we're seeing is, to maximize the potential of fintech, there are some underlying critical infrastructure and technology that can help really push things further. And again, eKYC has ranked as the #1 issue since 2016. In fact, every year we've had a member survey. This is actually the first working group that was created at the FinTech Association. Beyond that, of course, infrastructure such as cloud infrastructure is very critical to being able to reduce the barrier to entry into and eliminate not only a lot of the barriers to entry of CapEx on of course the server infrastructure, a lot of the tech backbones, but besides that, also areas such as open banking APIs, we believe will help greatly facilitate and accelerate the collaboration between fintechs and financial institutions. And the way I think a lot of the business models have been crafted in Indonesia is there is a mutual codependency. It is not fintech or financial institution. It's always designed with a collaborative mindset. And how can we as the fintech industry really function to extend the reach of the financial services that already exist today and focus on that digital reach, focusing on product market fit and being able to tune in to new segments that are perhaps need a little bit different thinking about what are the different challenges in the field and how do we adapt the current financial services to new use cases, to new markets, to new customer segments. The skills gap in Indonesia from the industry, it continues to be primarily around software engineering. The software engineering continues to be a large challenge in terms of the talent pool. And really, I think as much as the industry has been investing in it, there's the demand continues to outpace supply. And beyond that, there's obviously still challenges on the other side around professionals with a deep experience in risk management, and these are some areas that need hopefully further investments, and hopefully the new incoming student pools will be able to address some of these areas. And of course, the last but not least, and the #1 skill gap is definitely around data and analytics. I think data is and being able to analyze this data and make insightful and actionable business decisions is becoming of strategic importance. So these are definitely the areas that need the most attention. From a skills gap, majority today in trying to address the skills gap are training in-house. So we're hopefully by continually everyone doing their part, not only from expecting new talent pools to come out of universities, hopefully more and more in-house training and knowledge transfer can hopefully proliferate more skills within the industry. One thing that is very encouraging is that it's clear that every tech industry is predominantly male. And at least today, while that still is true, we're starting to see that more and more female professionals are coming into the tech industry. And we certainly hope that that trend not only continues, but accelerates. One of the areas that the FinTech Association is responsible for is balancing not only the accelerating the industry's growth, but how do we also enable consumer protection? How do we further improve good governance? And what does consumer protection mean? And I guess today, really the key area of focus where most of our industry is focused in on is really around data privacy and data security. It's really clear that data governance is really the hot topic, and part of this is definitely driven by, I would say, a global movement around personal data protection and privacy, and making sure that consumers are well informed and are consenting to the use of their personal information. I think there's no doubt that data needs to flow. Data needs to be used. There's a lot of value. We just want to make sure that the way that it's used is done ethically. It's done responsibly. And these are areas that not only come down to how and concepts of consent, but beyond that, also making sure that the technical aspects of how it is actually being secured, to make sure that even with the best intentions, we anticipate the rising proliferation and sophistication of cyber attacks, and ensuring that we as an industry are proactive to driving new standards and continually evolving our cybersecurity frameworks to meet the rising challenges from some of the cyber attacks that continue to get more sophisticated. From a complaint handling perspective, we're seeing that there's greater availability of complaint handling. There's the responsiveness, and I think a lot of this is also the way that customer complaints are being handled is progressing to more and more digital methods, and again, more and more. So in the past, it was definitely almost 100% via call center, and at least today, it's only about half of it, and the majority, surprisingly, is not email, but it's actually via social media. So social media is becoming more and more of an important channel for managing customer service. As I talked about sort of data management and the good governance of data management, a lot of this is just trying to simplify some of these needs, especially as an early startup, leveraging cloud infrastructure that has already been meeting international data security standards is certainly an area that really helps. Having said that, there are certain pieces of infrastructure that are being deemed to be quite critical and need to be onshore. And that's where a lot of those restrictions we understand. And I think as companies scale, also prepared to tackle some of those challenges. Beyond that, more than 90% have a disaster recovery plan, and not only in terms of backup sites, but of course, a full business continuity plan with SOPs and being able to have clustering and redundancy built into their services. Surprisingly, and this may surprise a lot of you, is that more than 50% of our members, 54% of our members are not only adopting our code of conduct, but already going above and beyond and implementing international standards and adopting international standards. And I think a lot of this is also driven by the aspiration for many of the fintech companies in our industry to be able to operate cross-border, to be able to play on the international stage. And these are encouraging statistics, and we hope that this will only continue to accelerate. So a lot of the standards from AFTEC, in fact, are referencing international standards, so we can hopefully harmonize between the international community as well as what is being done locally in Indonesia. So some of the last to wrap up, apologies that the slide's a little bit hard to read. So the highlights and recommendation is that I think fintech undoubtedly has significant potential in supporting national economic recovery, including the implementation of government assistance programs and being able to extend the reach to those in need. And really, when you're talking about micro and small medium enterprises, those are the ones that have been the most hard hit in the economy. The challenge is distribution to millions of micro entrepreneurs. And this is something where we strongly and firmly believe the fintech industry can play a very big role in accelerating that reach, because many of, as you saw earlier, more than 350 million e-money accounts already exist. And it's not about creating something new. A lot of the existing infrastructure can be leveraged to distribute government assistance programs and some of the, or G2P payments. And beyond that, we would really recommend to have a strong focus around regulatory harmonizations on a few key topics. And not one is definitely data governance, two is eKYC, open banking, and definitely the utilization of fintechs in G2P or government assistance programs. Our second highlight and recommendation is increasing the adoption of fintech has been followed by increasing risks, such as cybersecurity. It also brings forward the importance of consumer protection. So we recommend to develop an accountable system to foster compliance and good governance. But more importantly, let's define the cybersecurity framework concretely. At AFTEC, we already have some drafts in place, and we encourage all of you to, as a call to action, please come and collaborate and provide your insights so we can accelerate the development of these important cybersecurity frameworks to make sure that our growth in our industry is managed sustainably. And last but not least, consumer behaviors are changing. Consumers are becoming more digital, and the shift towards customer value and experience is becoming more and more critical and essential. So our recommendation here is to increase digital financial literacy through strategic public-private collaboration. It really helps to bring the community together on webinars like this and to see concretely the support from our government, from our regulators. And we definitely hear the expectations from our country's leadership, and we hope to do our part. And we encourage everyone on this call and the community to please be proactive and be engaged. And the more we work on this together, the faster we believe we can not only help the country, but we can move forward our industry. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and look forward to seeing the rest of the panels today.
Iya, di sini juga hilang.
So unfortunately, it looks like we're having a few technical problems, but in order to get the details of this annual member survey, there's a QR code. You can go ahead and scan it and feel free to distribute it. This is something that the industry's put together, and thank you very much to the AFTEC Secretariat for putting in the hard work and making this, giving these valuable insights. We hope this can serve many discussions to come. So please feel free to scan the QR code on the screen, and you can download the annual member survey and read it. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bapak Niki. Thank you very much, Bapak Niki, for presenting the annual member survey report. And for all participants, if you wish to download the AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020, feel free to scan these 2 QR codes. The report is available in both Bahasa Indonesia and also English. And now let's proceed to the first panel session for today. The subject that will be discussed in this panel would be if you collected, protected, data governance for responsible growth of fintech industry. And it gives such a great honor and pleasure to invite Ibu Celia Kotan-Konyard.
Morning, Ibu.
As the moderator for the first panel session. And before we start the first session, we encourage you to fill in the polling as shown on your screen. These are the 4 questions that you can choose, and we will discuss accordingly. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we would like you to fill in the polling. These 4 questions that will be discussed by Ibu Celia Kotan-Konyard and the 2 panelists for today.
Thank you, Bu Astri. Good morning to our distinguished speakers, Bapak Peri, Ibu Nur Haida, Bapak Budi, Bapak Niki, panelists, fellow moderators, and to all our participants today. I am Celia Kotan-Konyard, and I am an international counsel at Hiswara Bunjamin in Tanjung, and I'm delighted to be the moderator for this first session entitled, If You Collected, Protected, Data Governance for the Responsible Growth of the FinTech Industry. You may already be familiar with the saying that data is the new oil. This is even more so following the outbreak of COVID-19 and its development into a global pandemic. Individuals from around the world have relied more and more on technology and digital platforms to perform their activities and provide access to goods and services from the comfort of their own homes. And this explains the rapid growth of e-money, as we heard earlier from Pak Niki. Pak Niki also highlighted earlier that challenges and opportunities always go hand in hand. Recent cyber attacks exposing the personal data of millions of users of Indonesian digital platforms have shown how vulnerable personal data is on those platforms. So what does that mean for the responsible growth of the fintech industry in Indonesia? In facilitating commercial transactions and meeting consumers and businesses' needs for innovative financial solutions, fintech companies play a crucial role and handle vast amounts of personally identifiable information, from user account details to financial data. We have a list of very interesting questions today, and I invite you to vote now if you haven't already. And we will start with the questions that you have voted to be your preferred questions. You can also post questions on the Q&A box, and if we have enough time, we'll go through those questions as well. Before we start with the questions, I would like to introduce you to our distinguished panel speakers who will be sharing their insights today. We have Bapak Syahril Ramadan, the head of International Cooperation Group of PPA-TK. Good morning, Pak Syahril.
Good morning, Ms. Celia.
It's an honor to have you back with us today. We have Bapak Bobi Adityo Rizaldi, Commission 1 member of House of Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia. Good morning, Pak Bobi.
Good morning, Ibu Celia.
Good morning, Pak. Pleased to have you. We also have Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata, Vice Chairman of AFTEC and Managing Director of GoPay. Good morning, Pak Budi.
Morning, pleasure to be here.
Great. So I will begin with our new first questions that were selected by the audience. If the Indonesian personal data protection law was enforced today, what do you think will happen to the digital finance ecosystem in Indonesia? This is a very, very interesting question. It is very much hoped that the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is still currently being discussed by the House of Representatives, will be enacted very soon to provide the much needed umbrella and comprehensive general legislation on personal data protection rules in Indonesia. Pak Bobby, as a Commission 1 member of the House, would you like to let us know your view on this, Pak?
Okay, thank you, Celia. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to AFTEC, Pak Niki Luhur, and warm regards to all the speakers, Pak Budi, Bu Nur Haida, Pak Erwin, Pak Ferry, Pak Mirza, Pak Sahril, dan Pak Triyono, and the other speakers. Since this is my session is to update what's the process of the PDP bills that we expect to become the law by the end of this year. Course, we already put this as a national priority of legislation in 2020. So the expectation having this law, now still bill, I would say this would be the most advanced, maybe not only in the region in terms of the personal data protection law, but maybe in the world, since we are quite the latest one. And not saying we are left behind, because this draft, it's also adopt the latest issue, mostly in the digital platform cases, like in the US and in the EU and the other side of the world. And as the AFTEC already attended the hearing session in the parliament, and we took some significant notes there, and we also take this point seriously. Now we are enter the task force that began discussing and clustering, and we point some of our consideration that I will inform you ASAP, since it will already become the political standing of all the faction and become the law. And also as a budget committee, I would say there's in here there's a representative from the Bank Indonesia, Pak Ferry, Pak Erwin. We also sense the fearfulness in some of the, I'm not saying a group, but some might fear about the growth of this fintech industry. Maybe some negative things that oh, this will gonna be a shadow banking. But as a personally, I endorse to the growth of the fintech industry, since it could reach out more micro consumer that cannot be served by the mainstream or conventional system. So some of the notes that we are taking, at least with this law, ideally this data protection, personal data protection law, it's should be paralyzed with the cyber security law. But now, since the government only submit for only the personal data protection, at least with this law, we have a certainty applies to the data managers, data users, and data owners. Because if we try to elaborate more, our president said about the data is new oil, we have two big clusters. One is the ecosystem of the how to manage the data, acquiring data, processing the data, using the data in the digital platform or maybe in the government institution. We have other one. We have as a new data as an innovation education. This is the one that will enable the conventional industry have more accurate targeting and then grows that economy sector. So we have two big things. But in digital finance ecosystem, we have some input general and we already discussed it, but just in a highlight, the point of the AFTEC. First, I just take a point about the sanction. The sanction about in the original draft, there's also include the criminal sanctions. Why? Because there's an assumption and some reference of the cases that private companies sells the private data without any consent. So that's why it will be considered as a criminal sanction. But the input from the AFTEC, uh, this law should only apply the administration sanction like a financial penalty, compensation, and all of these things we gather in the Article 61 to 69. We now become discussing about this. And if we say why we need this bill urgently, because we need more certainty in some articles that not yet include in the bills. Just like the AFTEC ever mentioned about the subject, the differentiation between the personal data in the general and specific, the processing mechanism, the profiling, the interoperability. All of these things is not yet included in this draft. That's why we need further more time to formulating what's the best for the fintech industry. We took this very seriously. That's why the feeding from the real sector, the player, the key player, the main player, and the ecosystem of the fintech is very significant to us. And also other thing like relates the implementation of the processing shutdown period, limiting the processing personal data, granting access and updating data personnel. And also the other issue that now we not yet formulated and also take its stand about the control of the compliance. Some will say we should go for the US approach, like we have a self-regulatory. But the other one said like the approach for like the EU, we have the independent commissions. But at the moment, we also already have the state institutions, the KIP, the Public Information Committee. So in which body that we will give the authorization or the one that been mandated to oversee in this data personal data protection, this will be the political stand that not yet decided, but this is would be beneficial if the fintech industry give us a feeding. So since the the first questions, it's the most hardest part to respond. I just want to close it with we need some more feedback from the fintech industry, also from the financial sector. Since I'm not saying that I'm a boomer, so not a millennial. Since when I was an accountant back years ago in big four accounting firms, Deloitte, fintech is not yet exist, and then later on in the next 15 years there's an exist. So a lot of us is try to adopting this phenomenon. We still have some issues in terms of how to prevent profiling and personal data exploitation in which acquired illegally. The formulation of this is not yet complete, not only in some simple cases, but most cases that we have a reference today, it's quite a difficult since it sometimes is cross-border things. So this is the one that we still try to formulate. And this bill should also leveling the business uh, entity in the like the GDPR, for example, or maybe in fintech also have a leveling. If we have a used to data protection law for the household and personal purpose, or a small medium enterprise that have a less than a 250 employees, it's not really stricted to apply the law, because the law itself is very strict and maybe costly for SMEs. And the other formulation that we still try to discuss is about the authorization in which government body in the law enforcement for the cross-border litigation. Let's say for the cases that happens with the Indonesian data, but breach out in the outside of the Indonesia. And the last that we are trying to seek some reference, maybe better if fintech also give us some hints. We'd like to support the professions like privacy trust mark. So in if this bill pass, at least in the community, in the ecosystem, we have some, not a leveling, maybe rank to have a more trusted, that the agency can show to the public or their customer how well they manage their privacy of the personal data. So this is will be increase the trust, and then by increasing this trust, we hope that could more increases the transaction. Increasing the transaction is empowering our economy, and that's the highlight that I think is quite relevant to the first question, I hope. So thank you, Sela.
Very much. Thank you, Pak Budi, for sharing those insights with us. I'm sure that AFTEC and its members will continue to provide feedback on this very interesting issue. The PDP bill aims to produce a robust regulatory framework and need appropriate sanctions, as you mentioned, whether those are criminal or administrative are still being debated. But the sale of personal data without consent is a very interesting topic, particularly where the PDP bill actually contains an exception to that, where monetization of data is actually permitted when you look at the elucidation of the PDP bill. So I'd like to turn to Pak Budi, perhaps. Pak Budi, wearing your hat as the managing director of GoPay, a leading digital platform, do you think that the fintech industry is ready for the PDP bill? And can we have your views on this issue generally?
Of course, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I think I'd like also to echo what Pak Bobby said earlier, is that we see the role of fintech is also key, because there's a huge potential where fintech players can do a lot of reach out, especially to micro consumers, right? But I'd like to think that we are not competitors of the incumbents or the existing bank and financial institution. I think we complement each other, and I think, I believe that this is actually what Pak Peri has supported from the very beginning, which is interlink between banks and fintech. Now, I believe with the proposal of the bills of the PDP regulation, there will be three positive things that can happen. The first one from technology, right? Because of this law and regulation, companies like fintechs and banks alike will be enforced to implement certain technological standard that ensures the security and the privacy of data. Now, I'd like to remind everyone also, and I believe this is also echoed by everyone in this room, that we are merely the custodian of the user's data. We are not the owner, right? And it is our responsibility to keep the security and the safety of that particular data. If we want to utilize that data for the benefits of our user, then there has to be clear legal framework, and also there has to be clear safety and security measures around it. So the first one is technology. The second one is the legal and compliance aspect of it. We believe that with the proposed bill of PDP, then it will actually increase the customer's trust, because now there's a legal umbrella, legal framework with regards to customer data. Because there's a lot of questions, especially with consumers. What do these companies do with my data, right? Are they sharing it without my consent? I mean, I've seen also the draft of the regulation where consent is actually one of the biggest part of the draft itself, of the regulation itself. So it has to be clear and transparent when it comes to customer consent, that the customer consented that the data is being utilized and used for a particular purpose. And this will actually increase the trust of the customer, especially in financial services. And lastly is the business aspect itself. Because of the technology that is enforced, the security measure that is enforced, because of the legal framework that is already available, I believe that this will galvanize the financial sector, especially in this pandemic era where everything will be digitized, right? It will provide a peace of mind for the customers to go and adopt digital financial services, because now we can also offer safety and security measures. And I think we should also remember that myself in GoPay, even though that I am an industry practitioner, I am also a customer, right? I also use a lot of various payments and financial services. So I also want to make sure that my data is being used properly. So I think those three aspects will happen, and my point of view that this will only generate a lot of positive things in the future. Yes, it will be difficult, it will be challenging, but the idea is this bill is actually presenting a solution that hopefully will solve a lot of questions and a lot of concerns from a lot of people and our customers. So that's probably, in short, my point of view, especially with regard to this bill and how PDP will have an impact in the digital and financial services. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Budi. That was very insightful, and I'm conscious of the time, and we have only 30 minutes for this session. So I will move on now to the next question, which is, if the personal data protection law was enforced today, what do you think will happen to the implementation of AML and CTF? I would like to turn to Pak Shahril, who would be best placed to answer this question as the head of the International Cooperation Group of PPATK. Pak Shahril, what are the linkages between personal data protection and anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism? I'm not sure if Pak Shahril can hear us. Okay, there may be some technical difficulty. Apologies, everyone, for that. I can move on to the next question, which is trying to get the personal views of our panelists. In your personal opinion, how should we protect personal data in practice? Pak Budi, if I can share this question with you first.
Sorry, just to make sure that I understand correctly, I think the question is how can we, or how to implement data protection, right?
Yeah, in practice, in your view, in your personal view, not wearing your managing director GoPay hat.
So, in my personal view, right, I think data sharing, as Nikki has rightly pointed out, I mean, there's a lot of benefits in having a lot of data, and there's a lot of benefits in utilizing this data in order to provide better services and products to our user. But I also believe that data governance should be in place. So in order to define what should be implemented, there has to be a clear compliance program and also data governance structure with regards to this data. So in practice, right, we should really define who is the owner of this data. I mean, the owner of the data is clear. It is the customers, it is the users, right? So then how do you construct, from a product point of view, how do you construct a legal framework that really explicitly express the consent of the user for that data to be shared? Once that is all done, and then you also create controls within your organization before you share that. So SOPs, policies in place within the organization, that has to be key. And that is only the policy or the SOP aspects of it, right? There are several legal and regulation that we need to comply. There's the future PDP regulation. There's PBI from Bank Indonesia, which states also with information security management system. So first of all, we need to comply with these various regulations. Secondly, in order to comply with it, how do you ensure the technology aspect and the technical aspect is also satisfied? And that can be achieved with technologies such as encryption, but there are certain standards that you can comply with. For example, ISO 27001, ISO 31000 on information security and risk management. And lastly, it's the people itself. So there has to be a lot of advocacy as in a company internally to really educate people that we have the responsibility to keep safe of our user. We have the responsibility to maintain the security and the privacy of our user data. So these are the generally the three basic aspects of how you ensure governance, right? There's the policy aspect of it, there's the technology aspect of it, and lastly, the people aspect of it. So in my personal view, in order to implement it, you have to get the basics right first.
Thank you very much, Pak. Perhaps we can turn to Pak Bobby. Pak Bobby, what is in your mind? Where are we today with personal data protection, and where should we go? So how should we protect personal data in practice? I'm going to ask you the same question here.
Yeah, since the growth of the fintech industry, we talk about these sectors, we have to embrace the growth of this industry, but not yet covered by firm legislation or the regulations. We have some regulation or legislation that's scattered all around the sectors. So now it's the time we have some sort of the direct legislation that could endorse the growth of the industry. So this law should provide the certainty for all of the fintech ecosystem that can be have a firm reference if they have some litigation or some sort of the law cases, because at the moment we don't have any strong reference. All the things that have like a data breach all lead all to the criminal law. This is supposed to be not comfort for the industry. And I also encourage that both in my side as a parliament and also the government also to put aside the criminal sanctions. Why? Because this industry not like the conventional things back in 10 years ago, or maybe if we refer the other country that passed this law in the mid of the 2000 or mid of the 90s, this is not so relevant. Now, so we have a opportunity now, since we are the latest have the PDP bill. So at the end, the result of this law should give the financial technology ecosystem the comfort level, both to the investors, both to the ecosystem, and the result is to boost the economic growth in this sector.
That's very encouraging, Bobby. I think for most fintech companies, they will be very anxious about these criminal sanctions. And also it could have a dramatic impact on hindering technology innovation, for which fintech companies are very well known for. So thank you very much for sharing your views, Pak. I can see that Pak Shahril has now joined us. Pak Shahril, how are you?
Yeah, very good. I'm sorry, I have a technical problem.
No problem, Pak. Thank you that you can join us. I would like to ask you the next question, which is, if the personal data protection law was in effect today, what do you think will happen to the implementation of AML and CFT. Obviously, as the head of International Cooperation Group of PPATK, it would be great if you could share with us today the linkages between personal data protection and anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism.
Thank you, Ms. Elia. Good afternoon also for Pak Bobby and Pak Budi. For data protection, first I have to mention that our CFT and IML procedure is actually following international standard, which is issued by Financial Action Task Force. And the data protection as already discussed in FATF, and FATF already issue a standard and guideline that data protection should not hinder the implementation of AML-CTF regime. And I guess this became an issue in 2019 that FATF actually issued the regulation, because we know the case in the US in relation to Facebook data has been used for political purpose, and a lot of actually happened for data has been used by the company, that customer has been used. So FATF actually concerned that this issue could hinder the implementation of AML-CFT. So that's why they issue the regulation, and at the moment Indonesia actually has been in the process of mutual evaluation. Some fintech company also involved as a respondent for the evaluation of Indonesia. This is actually evaluation not to one company, but Indonesia as a whole. So at the moment, if, for example, the data protection has been in place, there is no effect or hinder of implementation of AML-CTF that already in place. And the connection between two, I think, by implementing AML-CFT, fintech company will be very easy to implement data protection, because the regime is almost the same, that the company should prepare the data from the customer, and then if it is suspicious, has been reported to PPATK as an FIU. I don't know actually the bill at the moment, but if we follow the general data protection regulation in the European Union, all of the company, not only fintech, but also financial institution and also DNFBP, that is called by FATF, the institution other than financial institution, to also follow the data protection law. So by implementing AML-CFT, of course, company or fintech will be ready to implement the data protection, as actually previously they have to report to Financial Intelligence Unit, PPATK. Now, if the customer actually would like to see the data and control the data, they are already ready. And I think for fintech company have more advantage with compared to other institution, because fintech actually already based on technology, and we know that there are a lot of development at the moment, hyper-convergence and also hybrid cloud. That actually make easy for fintech to adopt compared to more traditional, and that's actually create a leverage for financial technology to actually implement the data protection and also to increase their growth. I think that's my opinion, Ms. Celia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Shahril, for your views. Our session on data governance has now come to an end. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to respond to the Q&As, but I understand that the AFTEC team will be able to respond to those questions separately. Thank you very much, Pak Shahril, Pak Bobby, and Pak Budi for sharing your insights with us today. I will now hand over to our MC, Bu Astri. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the first panel has ended. Thank you so much, Ibu Celia. Thank you also to all panelists for sharing their thoughts and views. And now moving on to the second panel session for today, the subject to be discussed will be In This Together, FinTech's Role in Indonesia's Economic Recovery. And it gives great pleasure and honor to invite Bapak Wahyu Jatmika as the moderator for today. Bapak Wahyu Jatmika is known as the editor-in-chief for Tempo magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bapak Wahyu Jatmika.
Thank you, Mbak Astri. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to moderate the second panel on this very distinguished session and seminar. The title for this session is In This Together, FinTech's Role in Indonesia's Economic Recovery. We all know the numbers. The government has just announced the second quarter of this year, we suffer a 5% drop in the economy. And President Joko Widodo has repeatedly stated that if we don't bounce back in the third quarter, we will be officially in recession. It is quite a bleak forecast for this year, but it doesn't mean that we should just sit back and accept what happened. As people say, in every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. And so that is what we want to discuss in this session. We will particularly discuss how financial technology can play a role in Indonesia's economic recovery. And for this, we have a panel that will help us answer this question. But before that, please do fill in the polling. We have 4 main questions that you can choose to start our discussion. I will let you read all the 4 questions and then choose which one do you think is the most urgent and important topic to discuss. So it's ranging from the macroeconomic questions to the more specific microeconomy on how financial technology can play a role. Okay. I hope everyone has submitted their preference. So while we wait for the result, let me first introduce our distinguished speaker for this session. We have very lucky to have Mr. Mirza Aditya Swara. Pak Mirza is a very well-known name in Indonesian economy. He's a former senior deputy governor of Bank Indonesia. He's just finished his service there in 2019, last year. And now he's the president director of Indonesian Banking Development Institute. Thank you for being here, Pak Mirza. And we are looking forward to hear your wisdom in this topic. Pak Mirza obtained his bachelor degree in economics in University of Indonesia and then his master of applied finance from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. He's been a long-time banker since then. The second distinguished speaker we have in this panel is Ibu Haryati Lawijaya, or Ibu Faye. Thank you, Ibu Faye, for making the time. Ibu Haryati is the Chief Executive Officer of Link Aja, one of the biggest digital payment gateway in Indonesia. Before that, she has a long career in telecommunication industry and also banking industry. Before the CEO position, she was the COO for Link Aja. She finished her Bachelor of Accounting from Universitas Katolik Parahyangan in Bandung. So we will start soon. This is the result of the polling. Apparently the second question, how can innovation in financial technology help accelerate economic recovery, is your most urgent topic to discuss. I think we can go to Ibu Haryati first then, because this is more about the implementation of financial technology. And then hopefully after this, Pak Mirsa will give us the overview and the context of the economic condition and the potential recovery after Ibu Haryati.
Okay, thank you, Pak. So I think for the innovation in the fintech itself, like how it can help for the accelerate economic recovery is first is the digital transaction. So basically, for it's cashless. So during this pandemic, it will be very helpful. I mean, like, you know, I mean, like to have a safe transaction. So wherever people, I mean, like wherever they are, they can still do the transaction, I mean, so the economic can still growing. And then secondly, actually with the digital transaction, we can also like have some data, some information, which later on actually it can be a tools like where we can give an opportunity for people like access to the financial product or services, like for example productive lending, especially for those unbanked and underbanked segment. So I think that's in a nutshell, I mean, how the innovation in fintech can help like accelerate the economic recovery.
How prepared do you think the industry, Bu Haryati, to implement those innovations?
Okay, so I think for the digital payment itself, for the transaction, it's already there. I think the challenge is actually how we can, I mean, like educate, especially for people that is unbanked or underbanked, and especially in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So I think that's the challenge, and we are getting there. It's not easy, but it's not also impossible. So we can work, and actually all this time we work with the local government, including the local community, to accelerate that adoption, that education for people, especially in the tier 2, tier 3, and also unbanked and underbanked. And then secondly, there's first the education, and secondly, I think another challenge is about this the regulation. For example, during this pandemic, actually, we can leverage, I mean, government can leverage fintech infrastructure in terms of distributing the, for example, social fund. But of course, I mean, like all this time, I mean, like this is very new, perhaps for Indonesia. So the government regulation is not there yet for as an umbrella for fintech. I mean, to contribute further in terms of accelerating the economic recovery. And but it's not like not really there. I mean, like for example, for Kartu Prakerja, in terms of the Permenko itself, it's already like stating the fintech to be involved, right? To be involved in that program. So I think that's it's a good starting point. So then actually with that, the fintech can help further in terms of accelerating the financial inclusion for Indonesia.
Just one more follow-up question before we on to Pak Mirsa. Can you give us numbers or some stats? How industry, the financial technology industry, perform during the pandemic? Do you see a big increase in the numbers of users or transactions?
Okay, so I think perhaps when I will share what is I mean like the numbers from Bank of Indonesia for fintech industry. It has contributed like around 93 trillion for the first half in 2020, despite this challenge with the pandemic. And also from OJK, around 32 trillion for the online lending disbursement. As for Link Aja itself, I mean, we, of course, for some use case, like for example, transportation or the offline merchant, it's impacted a lot by the pandemic. So it's like decreasing a lot. But in other use cases, for example, like in terms of the say biller like for electricity, etc., it's really like growing like very fast. So we see like some use case, of course, because of the limitation in terms of like physical distancing, so it's going down. But in other cases, it's also growing. And especially we also do something like in collaboration with the Kominfo and also the local government to digitalize the local traditional market. So actually it's also helps like it's growing like more than 3 times actually in terms of the active user and transaction for that use case. I mean the traditional market that we digitalize together with the local government and Kominfo.
Thank you, Bu Fei. It's a very encouraging information. There is a silver lining after all, although it's some more regulation that more friendly towards the financial technology and more innovation. Let's move on to Pak Mirza then. What's your view on this? Can you please start with the macro picture about the recovery potential and then how fintech in your view can play a role?
Okay, thank you, Pak Wahyu. If we go to the simple formula of GDP. Simple formula of GDP is, I think all economists understand, is the C plus I plus G, and then export, and then minus import. So basically, economy consists of household consumptions, and then economy consists of investment from the private sectors and then state-owned sectors, and then economy consists of government spending, and then economy consists of international trade. And then international trade is basically export and import. So in Indonesia, household spending is about 60% of Indonesia economy. And in government consumption is usually only around 10 to 12% of Indonesia economy. In this crisis, and we know that this crisis starts from, is a health crisis, affect the economy. So in this crisis, household consumptions drop significantly. The corporate sectors, the SME sectors also got hit significantly. The export sector got hit significantly. And then the import sector got hit significantly. And that's happened everywhere, not only in Indonesia. So, and because the corporate sectors, the export sectors, the import sectors, the household sectors got hit significantly, so the government has no, or basically got hit in the revenue side. Tax revenue down, non-tax revenue down significantly, while at the same time must help the economy. So can you imagine the government spending that only around 10 to 12% of Indonesia economy must help the 60% of the consumption spending, and then the around 15% of the investment spending from the corporate sectors and from the SME sectors. So the government ability has limitation. The government ability has the limitations. So the best formula actually is the people helping the economy by doing the health protocol. Yeah, so because if not, the G side, the government sectors, the ability to have the economy has limitation. It is impossible. The government sector has to lift all the components in the economy. I give you an example of how we perform in the second quarter. In the second quarter, we minus growth 5.3%. In relative basis, this is still better than other countries. In relative basis, yeah. Of course, this is not good, but in relative basis, this is still better than other countries, because other countries, for example, like Thailand had negative growth of 12%. In my opinion, why Thailand had negative growth 12%, while Indonesia had negative growth 5% in second quarter, because Thailand dependent more on export sectors and on the tourism sectors, while the export sectors collapse, and then the tourism sectors collapse. Malaysia also got hit 17%.
Yeah.
Minus 70%.
If I can just ask you to elaborate on your first point there. You mentioned government spending has its limitation, and the biggest driver for our economic growth is domestic consumption, which means the economy has to move. But you also said that there is a health protocol to be obeyed. So how is that? How do you think financial technology can then play a role there? Is there a potential? Do you see the numbers and the potential, the opportunity? Financial technology can be a bridge to make the economy grow despite of all the health protocol limitation.
Okay, if we look government spending under pemulihan ekonomi, the pemulihan ekonomi, the PEN program. For 2020, the government spent or budget 695 trillion, so close to 700 trillion rupiah. Yeah, and to provide the 700 trillion rupiah, meaning the government must be able to find financing. Yeah, and the financing coming is combination of coming from the market and coming from the central bank. So this is the first time for Indonesia, I think after 25 years, that the government must ask the central banks to work together with the governments to finance the budget. We call it a burden sharing. So the 695 trillion or 700 trillion, if you look the PEN program, okay, the health sectors, the health sector spending total is 87 trillions, and then the perlindungan sosial, the bansos, the social protection, is the highest, is 204 trillion. So in this perlindungan sosial, bansos, Buffet already mentions that prakerja, I think fintech support in the prakerja. In the PKH, program keluarga harapan, I think that's a combination of the banking sectors. Kartu sembako, I think is still very is also in the banking sectors. But the dana desa, I think is still physical. The bansos tunai is still physical. So of the bantuan sosial or the pelindungan sosial of 205 trillions, the fintech contribution is still, in my opinion, is still a small part of the bantuan sosial. So of course, to do this, we need the infrastructure, we need support from other segment in the government, also from the regulator. There is also a program for SME. Program for SME 2020 is 124 trillion. Program for SME, including interest subsidy, is no fintech. Financing for the UMKM, there is no fintech. Penempatan dana in the perbankan, placement in the banking sector, there is no fintech. Penjaminan for credits, there is no fintech. Yeah, so in the UMKM side, at the moment of the 124 trillion, there is no fintech. So what I understand currently is being discussed is about Bangga Buatan Indonesia. Yeah, so the Bangga Buatan for Indonesia probably we can consider as a fintech involvement. Fintech involvement. I think the budget is about, I forgot. Maybe a budget around 7 trillion or 8 trillion rupiah. So if you talk about bantuan sosial, if you talk about SME program, the fintech involvement is still limited in
very low.
Yeah. And the support for the corporate sector is about 54 trillion. Support for the corporate sector 54 trillion is basically through lembaga pengembangan ekspor. It's not fintech. Penyertaan modal negara is not fintech. Yeah.
So in other words, there's a big room for improvement. There's a big opportunity. Try to connect banking sector with financial technology. One more question to you, Pak Mirza, before we go back to Buffet. You are a senior banker. You've been working in various banks, and your last position is in the central bank. You mentioned there's the big room for improvement. There's a lot of policies that not yet included financial technology sector. What do you think we need? What is the requirement to make this happen? The connection.
As a regulator, the job is to protect the public. Yeah. But as a regulator also, being emerging market is the job to develop market. To develop the market, I mean, is including financial inclusions, to encourage new product, to encourage innovation. So in here, I understand there is a dilemma for regulator. Yeah, on one side is about protections of the consumer, and then about anti-money laundering, while at the same time is how we can grow Indonesia in the prudent way and supporting the digital economy, supporting the fintech industry. Yeah, because as a regulator, always worry on the risk of shadow banking. Yeah, the larger the non-bank, the larger the non-bank sectors and the unregulated segment of the financial sectors, there's create risk. There is a risk about frauds. There is risk about money laundering. Also, being a central bank, being country with current account deficit, basically export minus import goods and services, and we are a deficit country. Deficit current account meaning we need foreign exchange revenue. The more or the larger the e-commerce industry, but if the product coming from import, because the consumer need cheaper product, that's actually create problem in our foreign exchange revenue. So how we can support our SME so that can replace the import product that's currently, I think, majority account in the e-commerce industry.
Okay, thank you, Pak Mirza. I think you put all the challenges quite frankly there, and I think we all do understand the dilemma and the challenges that we face in front of us. That's why I think Buffet should be able to respond that. What do you think, Buffet, with all the challenges but all the opportunity as well with this program from the government that needs support from financial technology to make sure it's distributed properly?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Pak Mirza, echoing Pak Mirza. That's actually a lot of opportunities. So basically, I mean, we have to work all together, like in the total ecosystem, like from like educating the market, educating the people, and also the ecosystem involved, and also the regulation that or the policy from the government that could involve fintech more, or leveraging the fintech infrastructure more to accelerate the financial inclusion in Indonesia. And also, I mean, like specifically during this pandemic, is actually to accelerate also in terms of the economic recovery. So I think that's kind of the components that we need to work on together. Yeah.
There's one more practical questions from the audience, Buffet. If you can see in the Q&A box, there's questions about lender product. And because of the economic situation, do you think, what are the opportunity for lender product in your view?
Okay, so I think first is during this pandemic is actually for the productive lending. And I think like I saw like the previous question, like how to get like the trust from, I mean, for the fund. So I think rather than like working as a standalone, like I mean, to give this the lending, actually it will be much more powerful if it works like in the total ecosystem. What I mean is, for example, I mean, with by having this payment ecosystem. So, for example, in the traditional market, I mean, like usually people like, I mean, the seller in the traditional market, they don't have access to the lending because of there is no data about them, nothing for scoring or underwriting by the banks, right? So having them like onboard them as our merchant, like in the traditional market actually. So we have some data about the transaction there, right? And then it's a like a initial like a base, I mean like the data for underwriting or scoring, so that we can distribute like the lending to them. Yeah, and actually it also get more trust from the, I mean like whoever like funding the lending, that okay, because there's like some scoring, right, some data as an initial starting point. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the key word from Ibu Haryati there is total ecosystem. collaboration. And that answer nicely to Pak Mirsa's point about the dilemma, about the prudent requirement from the regulators in seeing this financial technology grow. I'm sorry, but the time is only 30 minutes for this very interesting topic. Thank you so much, Pak Mirza and Ibu Haryati. We had a very substantial and fruitful discussion, and hopefully we can continue this in other time. Thank you so much. And with that, I hand it over to Ibu Sinta, the MC, to continue to the next panel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pak Wahyu Jatmika, and also thank you to all our panelists for sharing their knowledge and gave us such an interesting session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please move on to the third panel session, which will be our last session for today. The subject to be discussed is the quest to find balanced governing. And it gives us such a great honor to invite Mr. Jean-François Lecourt as the moderator. Mr. Jean-François Lecourt is the Managing Director, APAC, Board of Innovation. So please welcome Mr. Jean-François Lecourt.
Hey. Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. We just crossed the day. My name is JF, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome 4 panelists with us today. I'll do a short introduction, and then we'll deep dive into the exciting questions. So we have our first panelist is Bapak Erwin Adiono. Bapak Erwin is currently the Executive Director of Payment System Policy Department of Bank of Indonesia. And he's also heads a working group for digital transformation in the Indonesian payment system. Fantastic panelist to have with us today. He also had previous role in the Bank of Indonesia, especially chief representative in New York, and a very successful career. Thank you, Bapak Erwin, for being with us today. Along you, we have also three other panelists. We have Bapak Triyono Gani, who is currently the head of Digital Financial Innovation Group in OJK. Fantastic person to have with us today. He assumed previously several roles in OJK, including head of the Department of Communication and International Affairs. And as we know, the financial ecosystem and innovation is moving in the global place. So that's fantastic to have him with us today. Third panelist, we have Bapak Jauh Ari Sitorus. I hope I pronounce your name properly. Bapak Jauh Ari is currently the head of Project Management Office at the Secretariat of Indonesia National Financial Inclusion Council. He is also coordinating the Ministry of Economic Affairs for the Republic of Indonesia. Perfect panelist also to discuss with us on the right balance between innovation and regulation in Indonesia. And last but not least, we have Bapak Benedicto Ariono, who is the CEO and co-founder of CoinWorks. He spent his early years in the US and then came back to Indonesia, contributing to the country, which is fantastic, and has different roles in the financial industry. So thank you very much to our 4 panelists to join us today. And we will kickstart with, I think, a quick survey about the questions that we will be. Perfect, exciting, fantastic. So a few seconds, we'll let you vote on which question we have first to make sure that at least the most exciting one gets answered first. Okay. Okay, I'll follow the lead for the MC to tell me when the results are ready, and then we'll dig in. Okay, and
yes, ready.
Super duper. Okay, let's start with the 4th question, which is, in your opinion. So I'll ask to each participant, but then we can decide to maybe Bapak Erwin can try to answer first, and then otherwise Bapak Triyono or Jari. So going back to the question, what is the right balance. So just give me a quick second to phrase the question as it was written on the screen because they just disappeared. In your opinion, how would the balance between innovation and good governance look like?
Jian, thank you. Yeah. Can I start, Jian?
Yes, sure, definitely.
Right. Thank you for the session. Let me go directly to the question. So it seems to me that the question implies there's a trade-off between the governance and innovation, right? But I think if you really think about it, even if the trade-off is there, it's only in the short term. If you look at the situation in the very long term, I think both are going together. So think about this. If you are in the finance industry, trust is really important, right? So trust is everything because people make money and then they put the money in the industry. So you have to have this trust, right? So without governance, I don't think you have the trust and you have the business. Right? So I think by implying the governance, then you have the industry where the innovation exists. Right? So in the long term, I don't think there's a trade-off between the governance and the innovation, so to speak. And let me see some notes that have been taken during this seminar in the morning. It's interesting, for example, when OJK really coined the terms, which is the responsible growth of the fintech. So it already implies the long-term vision of OJK. Or, for example, Pak Budi in the first session mentioned you have to get the basic right. And I think the governance is the basic for the industry, for the innovation, so to speak. Or, for example, Pak Bobby mentioned from DPR, you have to give a comfort level so then people can chip into the industry. It's interesting if you look at this phenomenon, the governance in the fintech and innovation. I think pelindungan data pribadi, the private data is case in point, right? By having a law in this very important aspect, people will have convenience entering the fintech industry, right? Without that, I don't think people will have the confidence level to use the payment, the digital payment, for example. So the governance on the data plays a key role for them to create another innovation after innovation. So I think you can have so many examples on that, but I'm really would like to say in the very beginning that I don't think there's a trade-off in the long term, but probably in the short term. But then you really have to think about the business in the future when we really think about it. So to get to the question, how then to strike the right balance between those two, I think you really have to start your mind with those long-term perspective. I will stop here. Yeah,
thank you. Very exciting actually to see the perspective that actually regulation is an enabler rather than a constraint of innovation and of the overall industry. We saw that with the PPP framework that Indonesia was putting in place. Without a PPP framework, there was actually no ability to finance large government projects. So it's fantastic that you remind us that the regulator is not the enemy, it is not the parent that constrains, but it's actually
yeah, right. If I may just add one point to that, Jan. So sorry. So if you really think about it, the digital economy really relies on the existence of the data, right? The granular data becoming the new oils, and then it will be. There's a nice paper from the AMS saying that even the data is the factor for production, right? So it's really important, right? So without the data, without the granular data, without the data analytics and so on and so on, I don't think the fintech industry will grow, right? Exactly. And then the data needs the governance. There's the protection of the data. So because the data belongs to the customer, you really have to protect the customer. And again, you talk about those governance on those issues. So yes, I think I don't think it's a trade-off.
Thank you.
The business in the long term.
Thank you, thank you. And if I may, I would love to hear and to give Bapak Triyono the opportunity to build on your answer or provide his perspective from the TOJK as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this has been a very interesting discussion this morning, and I would like to congratulate AFTEC for launching such a very wonderful report. And I think this is a part of the governance, because in formulating policy, we certainly need some data and feedbacks. And this report, when I go through the report, I saw some important points, and it is very good for us to formulate the policy in the future, and also certainly also the short-term future as well. Talking about the governance, I think it has a very several dimensions. Which governance that we are talking about, because um, we also expect, like Erwin just mentioned, as written in our regulation, POJK number 13, it is very clearly stated that all the innovators should practice the responsible innovation. So that's a very basic principles that the innovator should have. In that sense, the responsible means a very broad spectrum of governance. It is not only doing a good conduct for their business, but also treat the customer fairly, and also certainly treat them very well, because exploitation is not really in our dictionary. So we cannot really accept such proposal that cannot really protect the customer and also give the benefit to the public. So that's our basic principles that we always use in our regulatory system. Um, I want to share about my feeling, because as I mentioned, the governance has a very several dimensions. From the regulator perspective, like myself and maybe by Edwin as well, we always get confused how to deal with the innovation. That's a very frankly saying from us, because my unit has been just established only in 2017. So I think it is very early bird unit in OJK, and we don't have any standard when we establish this unit. We don't know how to deal with this innovation, and um, the biggest problem is that we are used to the adoption of internet standard. That's the most easiest way to implement a supervisory strategy. But for the innovation, there's no such thing as standard. We cannot really learn from others. The type of feedback in Indonesia certainly is not the same as Singapore, for example. So definitely we cannot adopt a Singapore approach for promoting the regulations. In that sense, we then came up into the conclusion that we have to find out everything by ourselves. So we established our regulatory framework using the regulatory sandbox. That's the place, the very good, the perfect place, and I would also suggest some other countries to apply to apply this as well, because in the regulatory sandbox you can learn and see from the industry what is really happening, and also see what kind of regulation that is needed. So I don't pretend that OJK know everything very well. So basically, we are learning from the industry. So maybe our approach is different from Bank Indonesia, which was setting some standards in the first place. But for OJK, I think we are very happy to be behind the curve. So we are very happy to be getting into the into the market. So we learn from the market, and we listen to the market, and then we formulate what kind of regulation that is needed. So it is. I can also share you some information that according to our regulatory sandbox result, we are going to come up with several regulations. We are now doing the research and also preparing the draft of regulation. So we are expecting to have another new regulation come up very soon. It's because of we learned something from the sandbox. So that's a very good approach that we practice in OJK. And I also would like to recommend some other countries to have that approach as well, because we see a huge benefit. And the last thing is that the governance inside the fintech itself. We propose subtech and regtech. So we realize that fintech is a very small, tiny company with very limited financial sources. That's why we don't want to push them to apply very high standard as if we treat a regular financial institution. We oblige every single bank to have the compliance unit, for example. But for fintech, it is impossible to do that. That's why we encourage them, we oblige them in our regulation to have a regulatory technology. So please use the technology in order to increase their compliance. And last point that I would like to say is that it is quite surprisingly, because I thought that the industry, the innovations industry, they are avoiding regulators, but it's not the case, because some of the fintech came to my office and they asked for regulation. So this is quite surprising to me, because I thought that in the beginning, I thought that they don't want to be regulated. They want to be as free as possible because they are innovation based. But now they are coming to my office and seeking for some regulation. So it is a sense of good corporate governance they want to implement in their respective institutions. So basically, it was my experience and also the thing that I overcome in my regular business activities. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And we'll come back with the other question to you, but thank you,
Sure.
Bapak Triano, for your answer. If I shape the question and maybe leveraging Bapak Jawahari background at the World Bank in KL, in Jakarta, and this exposure across countries, Indonesia has different level of development within the country itself. People at probably the top 3%, but would look as developed, as wealthy as any developed countries in the West, a very fast-moving, growing middle class, and then some people that are much more humble, much more isolated. So if you have to strike a right balance between a regulation and innovation, how do you, Bapak Jawahari, would articulate that in a heterogeneous economy?
Well, thank you, Jeff, and selamat siang, good afternoon, Bapak Ibu colleagues. I hope you can hear me well.
Super well.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, this is a very interesting question. To me, striking the balance between innovation and governance or regulation is not only a quest, but it's like a conundrum. It's really difficult to find really a balance, and I don't think there is a static balance. It's always very dynamic. To me, it's like innovation actually a very powerful tool that makes our life more convenient and easier. But governance regulations is actually to make sure that our life is not only convenient and easier, but also safe and of high quality. So it's like two sides of the same token, and this is actually resonate well with Erwin and Triono had mentioned. And I think I'd like to quote my best friend Spider-Man, who once said that with great power comes great responsibility. I think this is something that is very applicable in this context. I don't think there is, it's a global standard or one single standard that fits all countries. It really depends on a number of factors. And here, I think rather than trying to determine where the balance is, it's perhaps more important to agree on the set of principles to make sure that a good balance will be achieved. And I think we could refer to what the FinTech agenda 2 years ago during the IMF World Bank annual meeting. and that set 12 sort of like principles that perhaps provide the broad guidance. In short, it's more like the approach should be more like a light touch and safe harbor approach, which I think our president also, alluded to, which I think is providing sort of like overarching framework that we should continuously thinking about when trying to determine where we are in terms of striking the balance. To me, so that's sort of like the big context. Each country has to find its own Pareto position in terms of this. But then, since I'm now with the Council for Financial Inclusion, I sort of like would like to steer your question a little bit by JF to my own interest. I was hoping that people would actually choose the first question, but anyway.
We'll get there. That's the next question I will ask, promise.
Thank you. But I think, as a company, fintech would subject to the general accepted good corporate governance standard, transparency, independency, fairness. But as an industry, I think fintech, because it combines financial services, which has a very unique set of risks. Erwin mentioned about reputations and other unique risks that other industrial sectors do not have, but also because fintech actually has been able to penetrate quite deeply in serving millions of population. So there is a risk of, to the stability of financial system and also the integrity of financial system. So for us at the council, we would like to see innovation because that promotes financial inclusion, that makes financial service more accessible, and that is very much in line with the mandate of the council. But having said that, we're not just talking about any type of access to financial services. If you look at the definition of financial inclusion in our strategy, and it's pretty unique, and I don't think many other countries actually have a very clear definition of what financial inclusion is. Our definition is a situation or condition where all people have access to various financial services, but we have also put a certain qualities. One, the institutions have to be formal, meaning it has to be licensed, it has to be supervised, it has to be meeting a certain governance standard. Secondly, in terms of the service itself, we want to have a service that are actually reliable, affordable, secure and timely, and also fulfilling the need of the people of customers. So we are basically talking about the universal responsible access to finance for Indonesia. So that's basically the ultimate goals of our journey from the financial inclusion perspective. But with that, also you can see that from the very beginning, we actually acknowledge the importance of governance regulations as part of the maintaining quality of access to financial services. So there are sort of, in my view, like 4 building blocks. First, obviously, regulation and supervision. This is sort of like, there have to be strong regulation, effective supervision. Secondly, there have to be compliance and enforcement of this regulation and supervision. And the third is the capacity of our shareholders. The fintech companies have to be able to implement all the risk mitigation measures to, do their own, internal audit, internal control. But the last one, this is very important, is the education of the customers. And we know from various studies that the literacy level of people in Indonesia is still relatively low, especially those who live in remote, in rural areas. I'm particularly talking about digital literacy. So despite all the modalities, for instance, our survey suggests that 46% of adults actually own a smartphone. And, but, only 25% of them actually know how to use mobile phone for financial transaction. And very few are actually aware that there is so-called fintech companies. Less than 3% actually had ever borrowed from P2P. So to me, the current development of fintech is still concentrated in urban and maybe peri-urban. But from our perspective at the council, we want to make this service to reach more people in outside Java, outside urban. And this is sort of like part of the quest, but also part of the one from that dimension. I think I'll stop there, Budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Before I move to the second question, I want to make sure that Babak Benedicto from CoinWorks has the opportunity to give his perspective as well as a representative in this panel of the fintech world.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I think in terms of adding to the points that's been made by the previous gentleman, I think I really agree in terms of approaches that have been highlighted. But in terms of from the industry perspective, if I can add from my humble opinion, probably two things. One is probably a bit more practicality principles, right? And in which I think the OJK has done a pretty good job in looking at making considerations between the positive upsides of the fintech innovations coming to the market versus the downside risks, and trying to limit the potential risks that might happen in cases of unforeseen circumstances or unintended consequences, right? For example, when the OJK first created the regulation for POJK 77, which is for fintech lending, the majority of the industry players back then that collaborated with OJK was mostly productive loans, right? But lo and behold, 2 years later, most of the players that registered on OJK is actually on the consumer lending side. But the OJK never shut it down, but rather look at it, hear back from the market, what's happening, and try to make an active judgment of what's happening, which I think relates to my second point, which is the judgment point of judgment part of the regulators, right? Because even though the law is kind of written regulations, there's still the human part of making a judgment, whether things are intended or things are unintended, and whether these things are still within some tolerance or not within tolerance anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, for example, the recent COVID examples, right? I just spoke to the Click Credit Bureau yesterday. They mentioned that in March, the number of active loan contracts in Indonesia was about 80 million. In July, it already jumped up to 122 million active credit contracts in Indonesia. Why? Because a lot of people during crisis, they lost their job. They want to monetize their assets. They convert assets to cash so that they can use it for their daily lives, right? But of course, on the other side of the equation is that credit quality's risk has actually gone up, right? So of course, about 12 million, 10% of these loan contracts got restructured during COVID times. So these are only restructurings that happened during COVID, right? And of course, as a fintech peer-to-peer lending, the lenders in our platform is also getting impacted, right?
Yes.
Some of these complaints might make it to OJK as well, right? Some of these guys. And of course, the OJK communicate to us what's happening in the market, what's happening to our platform, what's the statistics and all that. And so far, it has been a very collaborative environment where we managed to explain to them, this is the statistics, this is the industry, we're kind of aligned with it. But of course, when the risk is sitting on the lender side, then of course, there will be some impact as well that would happen to these lenders, right? And it's our job to educate the market and ensure that the risks are well mitigated to a reasonable degree.
I understand. Thank you. And I know we took a lot of time. Thank you very much, Babak Benedicto. If I may ask each participant to probably summarize their answer to the next questions, because it's a merger between the first question and what I see in the chat rooms and the Q&A rooms, which is what type of innovation does a regulator expect from the fintech industry, especially considering that with the upcoming recession or the environment in which we are, we will have organically higher NPLs, we will have a lot of people that are in financial distress. What type of innovation within COVID does fintech industry is expected to bring from the eyes of the regulator? That could give us business ideas also of people in the room. Let's start maybe with Babak Erwin, if you have a few ideas on the topics. I know we only have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, Jen. I'll try to be very short. I wouldn't expect industry will use more and more on the data, right? I think the beauty of the digital economy is because every single transaction creates the data, right? And then the data that can be incorporated into another business model. I would like to see that. In doing that, I would like to see the collaboration between fintech and the banks, the so-called open API concept or open banking concept. if you like. So I would like to see that. I think that's important, especially during the situation right now where the mobility is really limited, right? So then all the interaction using the data generated by those transactions in the digital payment, for example, it's really important as an input for another business model, say for creating the credit scoring or even for the SMEs, and I think I will also would like to see those interaction of using the data for the financial inclusion, for example. In our case, in using the PRIS, as the governor mentioned this morning, we have 3.7 million merchants so far, and most of them are SMEs, right? So if we have the data of those transactions, I think we can create many things from that, and I would like to see those innovation by using the data generated by the digital transaction.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that input. Passing the mic to either Bapak Triyono or Bapak Jauhari, considering that we might be cut midway through.
Okay. Let me share my view on this. Every cloud has a silver lining, right? I think everybody knows that. So in this situation, we see that there is a very huge change in our customers' behavior. For myself, I haven't really used the e-commerce very much, but since March 2020, I'm the heavy user of e-commerce now. So I think that's a very good sense of data that data source that Erwin just mentioned. So I think you can then tap a huge big data from e-commerce to see which part of the business that now is really running well. Some people say talking about the health care business and then the lifestyle as well. You know, everybody now is riding bikes, for example. So that's a very huge opportunity and very new field of business that previously didn't really entered by so many players. So I think we still can see some opportunities using the online transaction that is now really hiking in terms of numbers and also in terms of amount of transaction as well. And one more thing that I would like to share is about the government involvement, you know, because in this situation, when everybody holds cash, like Jauhari just mentioned, it means that everybody is really not really good appetite to invest. So they would really would like to keep their cash in their own. So in this case, somebody has to take action. Probably the best party who should start to take action is the government. So I think it is now timely for the government to trust more on the fintech to, for example, extending the core, for example. So I think to some extent it has been discussed, but I think if it is already in the market, it is good. But in terms of volume, I guess we should still reconsider this to be more put more trust on the fintech platform. So that's maybe my short comments.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry we have a limited time, so I'd like to thank our panelists. I'll summarize, I think, probably 3 learnings that we heard through our panel today, and then I'll pass it back to Ms. Bu Astri. I heard 3 things that were very encouraging from our panelists today. The number one is there is a perspective that regulation is here to support and enable an industry rather than to constrain it, protect the citizen, but also protect and encourage the actors to grow. The openness to actually welcome the fintechs to discuss and hear what regulation would help. I heard a positive attitude and mindset from the OJK of sandboxing and letting the young teenager try and then see what are the results and then regulate after when we start seeing what needs to be a bit more formalized. But at least let's innovate first and then regulate before it goes out of hand. And a positive information. So from Bapak Benedicto, which is with this roller coaster we're going through with COVID, keeping the communication channel open to make realize that what happens on one platform might actually just be a reflection of what happened in the economy, rather than basically on one fintech in particular. They are probably at the forefront of capturing and helping understand what may be hitting the most remotely located person in Indonesia, and bring it back to the regulator and to the officials to see and react to this. So it's a fantastic collaboration I've seen in this room, a lot of willingness to collaborate and fight COVID and innovate together. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Bu Astri, but thank you again to all our panelists today for their honest answers.
Thank you very much, Pak Erwin. Thank you very much, John, and also Pak Johari, and also Pak Benedict. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jean-Francois, and also to all panelists. What a great insights and fruitful discussion. But unfortunately, since our time is very limited, we are not able to answer all your questions. But don't worry, our AFTEC team will collect these questions and reach out to you after the event. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about AFTEC or want to be the AFTEC member, you can visit www.fintech.id or email us through info@fintech.id. And for all participants, if you wish to download AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020, feel free to scan these 2 QR codes on my left side. And the report is available in both English and Bahasa Indonesia. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the launching of AFTEC Annual Member Survey Report 2019-2020. We hope you all enjoyed each session, and thank you once again for your participation. We look forward to seeing you at the next AFTEC event. I'm Astri Abianti signing off. Have a pleasant rest of the day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you semua.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih semuanya.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Zan. Thank you, Mercy. Selamat.
Selamat ya. Reportnya keren banget.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Terima kasih.
Bye, Ibu.
Selamat Pak Niki dan Mercy.
Pak Niki, congratulations ya.
Ya, Pak Niki, merci. What next? Fintech. Fintech Festival for the next.
Ntar ngomongin tempat lain, jangan di sini.